What if Deku had Spider-Man's powers? In this alternate timeline, Izuku Midoriya is no longer quirkless, but not because of All Might. Instead, he's bitten by a genetically altered spider, granting him incredible agility, super strength, wall crawling, and a sixth sense for danger, just like Spider-Man. Without the legacy of One for All, Deku must find his own way to become a hero in a world full of powerful quirks. How will this change his time at UA? Will his new powers be enough to face villains like Shigaraki and All for One? And how will his relationships evolve when his identity is no longer tied to All Might's legacy? Let's explore what happens when Spider-Man's powers swing into the world of My Hero Academia. Chapter 1, Origin. If there was one thing that had been drilled into Izuku Midoriya's mind ever since he was a kid, it was the cold hard fact that not all men were created equal. Boom. Wow, Kachan. That rock was huge. You shattered it like it was nothing. A young boy with curly green hair cried out. TCH, that was nothing. Just wait till I see a bigger one, then you guys will see my real power. The 4-year-old known as Katsuki Bakugo or Kachan smiled devilishly as he looked down at his hands. He'd been practicing for months ever since his quirk manifested, and he couldn't be happier. His quirk was amazing. As a matter of fact, he was amazing. As long as he had this power, nothing would stand in his way. The boy was just about to look for something else to blow up before he heard the voice behind him speak again. You're gonna be an amazing hero one day, Kachan. Izuku Midoriya said excitedly, his cheeks a light shade of pink out of happiness for his friend. However, instead of taking the compliment and thanking the boy, Katsuki grew an enormous smirk on his face. A very big piece of information coming back to his attention. Hey, Deku. You're almost 5 years old, aren't you? When are you gonna go to the doctor to find out your quirk? Of course, the blonde already knew the answer to this, seeing as Izuku had confessed last week that he was quirkless. The green-haired boy's wide smile turned completely on its head in a heartbeat, and his proud demeanor fell as well, his shoulders slumping as he looked at the ground. That's not fair, Kachan. I already told you guys I don't have a quirk. Ah ha ha ha. I know that you dumb Deku. I just wanted to hear you say it again. Ah ha 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 ha. Seeing that their leader was getting quite a laugh out of the situation, the other 2 followers in the group decided to join in as well. After all, they cared a lot more about what Katsuki thought of them than that weirdo Midoriya. With tears threatening to fall down his face once again, the small quirkless boy mustered all the courage he had and raised his head to meet the blonde. Stop laughing at me, Kachan. If I try my hardest, I can still be a hero, even if I'm quirkless. Needless to say, that was the last time the green-haired boy ever stood up to his childhood friend. If he could even still call him that. Nowadays, 10 years later, things are pretty much the same, except arguably worse for poor Izuku. Seeing as he was now in his last year of middle school, everyone was buzzing about what they were gonna be when they grew up. And it wasn't a surprise to hear that everyone wanted to be a hero. Even a young quirkless individual. Answer the question, Deku. Is what the teacher said true? Are you really gonna try and get into UA next year? Bakugo shouted fiercely at the quirkless boy. Class had just let out, and he would be damned if he wasn't gonna squeeze some answers out of this nerd now that he had the chance. The nerd in question, however, could barely comprehend what was happening as he shook in his seat out of total fear. Kachan. I didn't mean for that to G get out. D don't worry, I'm not trying T to compete with YU or A anything. The boy finally stuttered out. It seemed that getting picked on for years of his life had taken quite a toll on the boy's personality. Well, obviously, stupid. There's no chance you could ever compete with me. But that's not the problem. You better not even show up to the entrance exam, or I'll fry you. I'm gonna be the only one in this dump of a school to get into UA, you got that? That's gonna be my epic hero story from my younger days. And I don't need a useless extra like you to get in my way, you got that? But Kachan, Izuku stuttered once again, trying to think of what to say back to his childhood friend turned bully. He was about to come back with the most compelling counterpoint he could think of, but he made the grand mistake of fidgeting with his notebook while he was thinking. What the heck is this? Another one of your crappy notebooks? The blonde smirked as he snatched up the quirkless boy's property. Ha ha. Hero analysis for the future? Why on earth would you need something like that, Midoriya? You're quirkless. One of the 2 boys behind Katsuki laughed. Yeah. You'd be lucky to even become a police officer, even those lame guys have quirks. Ha ha ha. The other follower added. Kachan, stop. Give it back. That means a lot to me. Oh? It means a lot to you? Well, guess what? Being the only one in this school to get into UA means a lot to me. So I think I'll hold on to this. I'll give it back to you after I get what I want, so you better stay away from UA, got that? Izuku wanted to respond, but he couldn't seem to find his voice in this time of high adversity. And to make things worse, he could feel himself quivering as tears made their way to the surface of his eyes. This seemed to satisfy Bakugo enough for him to relent and start backing away. Good, see you around, you crappy Deku. I can't wait to read all of the nerdy crap you've written in here. That way it can actually help out a real hero, haha. Wow. Great idea, Bakugo. Yeah, you sure showed him. What a wimp. With that, the class was left empty and silent. The only soft sounds coming from Izuku slowly putting away his things and standing up from his desk. The boy took his time on his way home that day, shuffling steadily while looking down at the ground with his signature slumped shoulders. It felt like he'd been slumping like this more often lately. But who could blame him? He'd been taking some nasty punishment throughout most of his life, both mental and physical. And it always came down to one specific person. Kachan, Izuku thought, moping even more than he already was. What did I ever do to you? Why can't you just leave me alone? The quirkless boy was so lost in thought that he never noticed that he had walked into a small tunnel that he usually took to get home. What's more, he was especially caught off guard when the manhole cover in the center of the tunnel was blown off, only for a large shadow to come flying out of it. What? Said shadow made its presence known almost immediately. Standing much taller than the meek boy was what looked to be a giant slimy mud monster. And it didn't take a genius to know its intentions weren't good at all. VV villain. Izuku shrieked as he turned tail and ran for dear life. It was no use though, as the large green blob had already set its sights on the helpless teen. Come here, boy, you'll make a perfect meat puppet. Catching up easily, the dangerous villain wasted no time in wrapping its slimy body around Izuku, doing its best to enter the boy's body in any way it could. Ga mphhh. The teen cried as he experienced the most uncomfortable situation of his entire life. The pain was truly indescribable. It wasn't sharp in any way, but it was urgent. More of a smothering, suffocating pain. Like drowning, only 10 times worse. This is really it, I'm really about to die, Izuku thought solemnly. In his final moments he did his best to picture everything that made him happy. Including his mom, his hero obsession, and his dream. No. It can't end here. Not like this. He thought frantically. Texas Smash. A new invigorating voice yelled. In an instant, a powerful gust of wind came flying down the tunnel, completely catching the mud villain off guard as it was thrown into the air and off of its victim. Izuku, however, was still disoriented and missed how the newcomer quickly leapt into action and captured the creature into a plastic soda bottle. Texas Smash? Izuku thought calmly as he blinked his eyes open from his position on the floor. There's no way I heard that right. That would mean that the hero that just saved me is. I am here. The same powerful voice exclaimed, proudly standing in the disoriented teen's view. Are you all right, young man? I appreciate you keeping that villain distracted for me. Without wasting another second, Izuku's eyes shot open all the way and jumped to his feet as if nothing had ever happened. Excitement at meeting his idol taking over his whole body. All Might. It's really you. I can't believe this. I'm your biggest fan. Ah ha ha, the enormous man laughed oddly. In fact, enormous was still not a proper descriptor for the incredible size of the man. His well-built form sporting a white collared shirt and some brown khakis. I thank you, young man, I get that reaction a lot. Would you by any chance have anything I could sign for you? It's the least I could do for causing you so much trouble. I wrapped it up faster than I thought. I have 5 whole minutes left, spending a few on this fan should be no problem at all. The number one hero thought as his winning smile widened even more. What? And no. Please don't think that, All Might. You were no trouble at all. This is the best moment of my life, Izuku shouted for joy, the first part of his hero's question now coming to the front of his mind. Oh and He trailed off as he frantically searched his yellow backpack for his hero notebook. It would be legendary if he could get All Might's auto. Oh yeah, Kachan took it, the teen mumbled to himself dejectedly. Sorry, All Might, I don't really have anything you could sign. The large man never dropped his large grin, gently placing his hand on the boy's head affectionately. It's no problem, young man, perhaps some other time. Until then, stay safe, and never forget to smile. Izuku's eyes widened as he watched his hero turn around and walk away without another word. No. I can't just let him walk away. This is my big chance. The boost I've always needed. I need to ask him. All Might, wait. I need to ask you something. Normally the pro-hero would have ignored the boy with some sort of excuse to leave faster, but seeing as he still had a couple minutes left, the man stopped in his tracks and craned his neck to look back at the green-haired boy. He felt somewhat bad about not being able to get his fan an autograph, so perhaps that's what urged him to stop and wait. "What is it, young man? I have places to be." I'm sorry to bother you, All Might. I just need to know something." Turning around now to completely face the boy, the number one put on his signature smile and gave a huge thumbs up, signaling he was ready for anything. "Let's hear it, young man." Joining his idol with a small smile, Izuku took a deep breath and began pouring his heart out. "All Might, all my life, for as long as I can remember, the only thing I ever wanted was for someone to believe in me. For someone to back me up and tell me I could accomplish my dream if I tried hard enough. I've never had anyone to reassure me, no friends, nothing. Even my mom doesn't believe in me. She tries to hide it, and of course, I still love her to death. But it doesn't change the fact I still need someone to tell me." Now feeling genuinely concerned, All Might put a hand on the boy's shoulder to get attention again. "Say it, boy, I'll do my best to encourage you, but that sounds like a lot of baggage that you're carrying around. That can't be healthy." The green-haired boy snapped out of his rant as soon as All Might spoke. He hadn't meant to go so off topic. With that, however, Izuku clenched his fists and shut his eyes tightly. It was now or never. The answer he would get here would make or break his decision to become what he wanted most. "See, can I be a hero like you even if I'm quirkless?" The pro-hero stepped back with his eyes wide. He had somewhat expected that the question would be about hero work, but the whole quirkless thing came completely out of left field to him. Quirkless? They still exist? All Might thought before shaking himself out of his stupor. This boy was clearly still waiting for a response from his idol. It was best to not let him down. But then again, was that even an option? "Listen, young man, I honestly didn't even know that being quirkless was even possible anymore these days. They say that only 20% of the world is still quirkless, but from what I understood, that was all in the old generation." Izuku was too stunned to speak, and there was no way he was about to interrupt All Might. But deep down, the pit in his stomach was telling him exactly where this conversation was going, and he didn't like it one bit. "Push those thoughts away. I can do this, I can be a hero. Just the fact that you're standing here telling me all of this proves to me that you've had a hard life already. And I'm truly sorry for that, young man, I really am." Okay. So far this was a bit more pity than I was expecting. The boy thought cautiously as he gulped audibly for the moment of truth. "But you can't become a hero, it's too dangerous for someone like you." Izuku's blood ran cold as the words left his idol's mouth. What did he just say? He clearly heard wrong, right? "No, I didn't hear wrong," he said. "I can't be a hero. And if All Might says so, it's probably true." As the quirkless boy stood there, mouth agape and eyes wide while his entire world crumbled around him, All Might was about to say something else to at least try to make the boy feel better. But before he could even open his mouth, he felt his time begin to slip away as steam began forming around his body. Darn, what horrible timing. I can't just leave this boy like this, can I? In the next moment, All Might watched as the young man in front of him fell to his knees and wept his eyes out in a truly heartbreaking manner. "Oh crap. I've got a split, sorry kid." The large man panicked at the awkward situation before him, jumping off onto a nearby building before finally reverting back to his true form. Now looking a lot more skeleton-like, All Might looked down from atop the small building to the green-haired young man still crying his heart out. In truth, he really did feel bad for the boy. But at the same time, this was for the best. He knew firsthand how dangerous the hero world was. And there was no place for weakness, that was for sure. Once again, "I'm sorry, young man," All Might began, his voice not booming at all anymore. "I hope you can one day come to terms with the bad hand life has dealt you. I wish you the best." With that, the lanky hero turned around and walked into the building and began down the stairs. In the end muttering something about being glad he made it out of there in time. The last thing he needed was a fanboy turned hater to spill out all of his secrets on the internet. Izuku didn't know how long he sat there in that tunnel crying until he simply couldn't anymore. Heck, he didn't even look up from the ground until he saw the setting sun had caught his attention off on the horizon. And it was also at that point that he realized that All Might was long gone. Forcing himself to stand up, Izuku did his best to hold back any more incoming tears from falling. It was odd to say, but it was almost easier now. Instead of sadness, all he really felt was empty inside. Which, to be honest, wasn't much better. The boy still couldn't believe All Might said the things he did. For the longest time, the man was like a ray of sunshine in his life. Something he could strive to be every day. Something that gave him light on his generally dark life. How could he just crush his dream like this? With a heavy sigh, Izuku slumped his shoulders for what felt like the millionth time that day. It was official, he wasn't meant to be a hero. And with that last thought lingering in his mind, he began trudging back home. It was getting late, and his mom would start to worry if he didn't get home soon. "Shigaraki-san, please forgive me. Just shut up already, Kurogiri. I'm tired of your whining. What's done is done." "But the specimen, sir. What will Master say? I don't deserve to be by your side any." "Master isn't gonna find out about this. Got it? Now get out and start looking. We can still fix this." With that, the two shady men stepped out from what seemed to be a purple shadow at the end of a dark alley. Once both men were completely out, the shadow quickly faded and became a part of one of the men's bodies. "Are you sure this is where you teleported it?" "Why yes, Shigaraki-san, I can't apologize enough. I must learn to control this power properly. I already told you to stop that. I thought you Nomas were supposed to obey orders." I apologize once more, sir. I swear, Kurogiri, I'll kill you right now if you apologize again, 'cause I am not in the mood. Master just finished making you, so you're obviously not gonna have that much control. So just shut your mouth and help me find the specimen." "Alright. I won't let you down, Shigaraki-san." "Oh, believe me, you already have." The oddly pale man grumbled as he bent down and placed a cardboard box on the floor. Shigaraki-san, what's that? Is it something to help us track the specimen?" If you must know, it's just me playing things safe. There's no guarantee that we're gonna find this thing, so it's best if I get rid of this. I don't need Master to know I had such childish reasons behind my decision." The purple-shadowed figure decided to bite his tongue on asking any further questions to his superior. He knew well enough not to pry, especially when Shigaraki-san was being so vague. "Very well then, shall we seek out what we came here for?" A manic grin sprouted onto the pale man seemingly out of nowhere. "With pleasure. Not in the mood," came a loud and definitely angry cry from just around the corner. The sheer volume of the voice was enough to make Izuku both flinch and wince as the sound tore through the quiet night. What? What was that?" the meek boy asked shyly as he turned around and saw nothing. The sound must have come from one of those alleyways that he had just walked by. Despite having every reason not to go and investigate what he had just heard behind him, Izuku found his legs moving steadily on their own towards the dark alley. "No. What am I doing? Today is already the worst day ever. I don't need to top it off with dark and scary places that could lead to death." Suddenly though, the boy's train of thought was shattered when he heard footsteps and two voices right on top of him. This unfortunately is where fear started to set in permanently as he froze in place. This was certainly turning into a worst-case scenario for the boy. And it only got worse when the two menacing figures turned the corner and found the quivering boy shaking in his boots. Why did the universe hate him today? The phantom man seemed almost unfazed by the boy, but the pale one almost seemed to thrive off of the fear emanating from the teenager. He, the pale man laughed creepily. "Hey there, kid, isn't it past your bedtime?" Izuku was too scared to even cry out when the man reached out for him. All he could do was step back and fall on his butt as he scrambled back as far as he could, eventually pressing his back to the alley wall in fear. Ha 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 ha. "Look, Kurogiri. He looks like he's about to crap himself. Now that's what I call a hero. Ha 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 ha." The man laughed sarcastically. The shadow man on the other hand did not look amused at all. After a few more seconds of the pale man's laughter, he leaned over and whispered something in his ear, making the man straighten up and gather a serious look on his face. "Right, sorry Kurogiri, I just couldn't help myself." Izuku held his breath as he watched the two shady men continue to walk down the road. The two seemed to be looking for something. And judging by how they were exclusively looking at the ground, it was probably something small. But that was the last thing on the quirkless teen's mind at the moment. A lot more important things running rapidly through his mind. Who were they? Were they villains? Why were they so scary? Should I call the police? No, I can't. That would make me even more late home. And mom's gotta already be freaking out. But I should still do something right. There's gotta be a hero around here somewhere. Why is my neck so itchy? Maybe I have time to warn a hero if I hurry. Izuku paused as he backtracked through his insane musings. Normally his neck being itchy wouldn't be an issue. Unless the itchy part was slowly moving around on said neck. Keeping surprisingly calm all things considered, Izuku slowly tilted his head up for any information he could find. And when he found what he was looking for, he breathed a sigh of relief. He almost didn't catch it, but there, right above his head hung a minuscule thread of spider web practically glowing in the moonlight. Okay, this is good, not as bad as I thought. It could have been a cockroach. Now that would be reason for panic. Just relax, spiders are fragile and very easy to spook. So as long as I just stay calm, I should be just fine. Ah! The quirkless boy yelled as he slapped his neck where the spider just bit him. Dang, so much for that idea. Ouch, why did that hurt so much? Cringing as he gently plucked the dead spider from its spot stuck to his neck, Izuku brought it up to his eyes and focused on it. Hoping it wasn't some crazy venomous kind that would land him in the hospital. Looking closely at the dead arachnid, the green-haired teen could easily say one thing: he had never seen such vibrant colors on a spider before, that was for sure. Before the boy had any more time to analyze the red and blue creature, he remembered how late it was and jumped up from his seat on the floor. What am I doing? I've already wasted so much time. Mom must be worried out of her mind. The boy stammered out, not hesitating to reach into his pocket and pull out his phone. Well, if you could even call that a phone anymore. No wonder I haven't gotten any worried calls from her. It must have gotten crushed to pieces when that slime villain tried to capture me. The boy thought dejectedly as he looked down at the scrap parts that used to be his phone. Looking down at both of his palms, his broken phone remains in one hand and a dead spider in the other, Izuku could only think of one phrase that would fit this moment perfectly. This really was the worst day ever. Chapter 2, Changes. When Izuku finally reached his street and ran up the stairs to the apartment, two things were very apparent in his mind. 1. The fact that the police weren't on the property at the moment, which, considering how worrisome his mother was nothing short of a miracle. And 2, was the fact that his head was absolutely pounding right now. And the rest of his body wasn't feeling too hot either. It was hard to describe, but it sort of felt like all of his organs were expanding inside of him, and it was making him feel really sick. It didn't take the boy long to reach his floor at last and knock on the door. Not surprised at all when it was answered before he even got to the third knock. "Oh, Izuku." A short and somewhat round lady screeched as she tackled her son in a hug. "My baby boy is all right. Where were you? I was this close to calling the police. Do you know how worried I was? I thought you had been kidnapped, or attacked, or..." "Mom," Izuku gently interrupted, sighing as her intense mumbling made his head hurt even more. At least now he knew where he got it from, along with just how annoying it could be. "I'm okay, Mom, but I don't feel so great. I'll explain everything in the morning, okay? Right now I just need sleep." "Are you sure? I could make you something. Are you hungry? Thirsty? I could." The green-haired woman was cut off by her son slamming into her with an enormous hug. "Izuku?" Inko asked worriedly as she returned the hug without hesitation. For the quirkless boy, things were confusing right now. And he didn't really know what his next step was. All he knew was that a hug is what he needed right now, even if it wasn't the kind he wanted. No matter how badly he wanted to, he would not break down right here in his mother's arms. He didn't really know where he was at as far as his dream went, but he would figure it out later. "Good night, Mom," Izuku said shakily as tears threatened to fall once again. Inko was frozen as her son detached from their hug prematurely and walked past her. "Izuku? What's wrong? What are you not telling me? How can I help? What do you need?" The green-haired boy froze at her last question right as his hand found the doorknob to his room. His mind thinking back to a few seconds ago when he could only feel a slight amount of comfort from his mother's hug. "I need someone to believe in me. I need sleep. Good night, Mom." With that, the young man closed his door behind him softly, not wasting any time in stripping down into his underwear and collapsing onto his bed. Shivering sickly even under the warm covers. What's happening to me? The next morning when the boy woke up, he felt odd. And not necessarily in a bad way. But sitting up and wiping away the sleep from his eyes, the quirkless teen couldn't help but feel that something was off. "That was some of the best sleep I've had in years. I guess I was more mentally drained than I thought." The teen mused to himself, not wanting to even remember how horrible the previous day was. After a quick yawn and a simple stretch, Izuku hopped up out of bed with some impressive spryness and stared at himself through the mirror that hung on his closet. What?" The boy sputtered out as he looked at his shirtless form. "He didn't sleep that well, did he? Since when does sleeping give you muscles?" And as stupid as the sentiment sounded, there were indeed some curious changes that emanated from the boy's physique. To put it simply, it looked as though the green-haired teen had put on about 20 pounds of lean muscle without doing so much as a single push-up. He wasn't huge by any means, but he was exceptionally fit, and boy did it show. Seriously, what the heck happened? I look ripped. The boy took this crazy newfound muscle in stride as he flexed in front of the mirror with a small smile on his face. The boy wasn't used to good things like this happening to him, so he was going to take his victories whenever he could, even if he had no idea how they happened. He must have gone through at least 20 poses in the short span of 5 minutes. His last one wiping the small smile off his face as he performed it out of muscle memory. "Izuku," his mom said from the other side of his bedroom door. "I hope you're awake, it's almost time for school." The teen stood there in the mirror for a couple more seconds frozen in place. His eyes began to gloss over as he held up one arm in a very familiar victory pose. With a heavy sigh, Izuku put his fist down and slumped his shoulders. He had a feeling that pose would never again bring him the same happiness it did before yesterday. "Yeah, Mom, I'm up, I'll be out in a bit." After changing and getting ready for school, Izuku's demeanor was still looking down. It looked like the events that transpired the day before were still fresh on his mind. Something that his mother was now very aware of after taking one look at her son. "I'm not all that hungry, Mom, I think I'll just head out. I don't want to be late." Inko frowned at how sad her son looked as he walked past her to the front door. She was beyond worried for him right now. And to be totally honest, she had no idea what to say to him right now. "Izuku." Stopping right, he opened the front door. The teen in question turned around, a fake smile plastered on his face. "Yeah, Mom?" "Izuku, I trust you, and I want to give you the space you need. But I'm also worried. So please, promise me that you'll talk to me tonight. I know something is bothering you." After a few painful seconds of trying to keep up his obviously fake smile, the quirkless boy broke and let his expression fall back into a look of despair. "Yeah, okay Mom, that sounds fair. See you tonight." Without another word, he walked out the front door and out into the morning sun, not so ready to take on another day. And it wasn't until he was right outside of Aldera Middle School that he heard a very familiar ring, signaling that he was now late. Perfect, just what I needed. That's what I get for moping around the whole way. The green-haired boy thought bitterly. Well, at the very least I get to avoid running into Kachan before class starts, so I guess that's good. He thought again, trying to look on the bright side of things as he hurried his way into the school. Just as he had thought, Izuku was able to avoid Bakugo's regularly scheduled morning harassment by being a few minutes late to homeroom. He knew the blonde would never try anything serious during class. Sure, the teachers here already gave him lots of leeway because of his impressive quirk, but Bakugo wasn't stupid. He would never push the limits of that leeway too far in any direction. He wasn't about to risk his bright hero future just for some petty bullying. This same way of thinking, however, was nowhere to be seen in the blonde-haired teen when no teachers were around to see him. "Gee Deku, I can't thank you enough for having such perfect girl handwriting. Makes all these stupid tips so much easier to read," Bakugo said with obvious sarcasm in his voice. He and his cronies had just sat themselves down at the quirkless teen's empty lunch table just in time to have some fun with him. They had missed out on it in the morning after all, and he just couldn't resist tormenting his classmate after spending the better part of last night reading through his shitty journal. As the laughter of his two followers rang in his ears, the blonde bully only gained more confidence, raising the journal up and dangling it right in the boy's face. "So what do you say, Deku? You want to explain to me why someone as pathetic as you needs all this information on heroes?" Izuku winced a bit when his former friend's hand reached so close to his face. Even if it was just to make fun of him and tempt him by rubbing his own journal in his face, the quirkless teen still ended up flinching quite heavily, only drawing more laughs from the three boys in front of him. "Ha ha ha ha. I'm just showing you your notebook, you nerd. Why are you flinching like a coward? Ha ha ha." When Izuku looked up timidly a moment later, his eyes widened a bit. Instead of responding immediately, he saw that Bakugo was turned around and laughing along with his two friends. And yet, he was still holding the notebook right in front of his eyes. "Maybe if I'm quick I can." "No." He yelled to himself in his head, shutting down his wayward thoughts immediately. If he tried taking it back now, he would surely fail. All he would manage to do is anger his former friend. And that was not something that anyone wanted, that was for sure. "Just sit here and suck it up, that's what I've always done, and that's what I'll always do. If I'm quiet, maybe he'll leave faster." The boy nodded at his pathetic plan and started to go along with it. However, he soon remembered a very important detail about why Bakugo even had his notebook in the first place. And soon, a slew of memories began invading his head. "Oh? It means a lot to you? Well, guess what? Being the only one in this school to get into UA means a lot to me. So I think I'll hold on to this. I'll give it back to you after I get what I want, so you better stay the fuck away from UA, got that? But you can't become a hero, it's too dangerous for someone like you. That's right. The answer's right in front of me. I can't be a hero, I know that now. So if that's that, then I can just tell him and get my journal back, right? But wait, if I don't want to be a hero anymore, then why do I even need the notebook? Ugh. This is so confusing. What do I want? In his big swirl of emotions, Izuku lifted his head up out of his thoughts and acted completely on instinct, reaching out quickly and grabbing a small corner of his hero notebook. Bakugo instantly noticed the small tug on the piece of parchment and turned his head back with fire in his eyes and a smile on his lips. It was as if he had just gotten the correct answer to something he was waiting for. What do you think you're doing, nerd? Let go of that right now before you piss me off. Almost simultaneously when the words left his lips, Izuku's soul left his body, losing his nerve completely and releasing the pressure on his fingers and letting the notebook go. Or at least he would have if his hand wasn't stuck to it like glue for some reason. You wimp. I told you to let go. You think I'm playing around right now? Bakugo yelled, now standing up getting serious, as well as grabbing the attention of the whole lunchroom. Hee, looks like Midori is about to catch another beating. Poor kid, when will he learn to stop messing with Bakugo? Ha! Screw him. Kick his butt, Katsuki. Izuku did his best to ignore the chattering around the lunchroom as tears swelled in his eyes in a panic. Keika-chan, I'm trying. It's stuck, just gimme a second too. Before the quirkless teen could finish his desperate sentence, he felt a ringing in the back of his head. It felt extremely uncomfortable. Like there was something in his brain trying to tell him something. With wide eyes and a sudden realization in his mind, Izuku quickly looked back up to the situation at hand to see that there was a fist coming at him. Courtesy of his blonde friend turned bully. What? Why is it so slow? He thought with surprise written all over his features. It was almost like time had slowed down for a moment around the entire lunchroom, and only he was at normal speed. Either way, Izuku was timid, not stupid. So without another moment's notice, he craned his neck out of the way slightly while still holding onto his notebook, making it so that Bakugo's fist would pass right by his cheek. And as it turned out, this was exactly what happened. Except to everyone else, it just looked like Izuku had the reflexes of a seasoned pro hero. Dozens of gasps were heard across the whole cafeteria as Bakugo missed his punch decisively. Not even he could believe what just happened. This was apparent when he took a few seconds to wipe the look of utter surprise off his face and reel his fist back to a resting position. Now absolutely steaming with anger, the blonde boy's face was no longer sporting a competitive smile. Instead, his eyes showed pure hatred and fury as he opened his mouth to speak again with gritted teeth. I'm only gonna say this one more time, you useless Deku. Let go right now, or we're really gonna have a problem. Shivering ever so slightly at the teen's words, Izuku tried once again to let go of his precious notebook, but to no avail. Even when Bakugo began tugging on it more and more, it only felt like his grip on it only tightened. Still too confused and scared to speak, Izuku began to panic as he tried and tried again to let go. Unfortunately though, to Bakugo, these frantic attempts looked more like resistance than compliance. Alright. That's it, Katsuki yelled as he quit playing around and began pulling forcefully on the hero notebook. Izuku could tell immediately that his former friend was done with the games when his face began to strain as he pulled with all his might. The only thing that was still perplexing to the green-haired boy at this point was why he wasn't being pulled out of his seat if his hand was stuck to the notebook. Is he really pulling as hard as he can? It looks like he is. But then why does it feel like nothing to me? Og. You brain-dead nerd. Let go already. Bakugo huffed, now putting a leg up on the lunch table for more leverage as he pulled even harder. All of the sudden, Izuku's heart dropped as he heard a small, yet very distinguishable ripping noise coming from his prized possession. He looked up and noticed that a small corner of his notebook had begun to tear. Begun being the key word, because before it could get any worse, something inside the boy cried out, and out of nowhere, his hand came unstuck in a heartbeat. What the whoa? Bakugo yelled as he gained full control of the parchment back, only to go sailing back and bumping into another table with all the force he was using before to pull. This would have been the end of things had he also not bumped into another student with lunch in his hands, causing them to drop a glass of orange juice right onto the explosive boy's head. Sitting there, his head wet with orange juice, and absolutely sizzling with anger, Bakugo looked up with the eyes of a psychopath looking for his target. Only for the spot where the quirkless teen once was to be empty. No one in the cafeteria dared to laugh at the blonde-haired boy. Even when he stood up and left the lunchroom without another word, no one dared to speak for a good 5 minutes. One laugh, no matter how good, was not worth getting on Katsuki's bad side, that was for sure. "Hey, Katsuki. Wait up," one of his followers said, following the blonde out of the cafeteria. "So what's the plan? Are you gonna find Deku and fight him?" "Yeah," the third friend of their group added as he caught up to them. "He needs to learn his place, he can't do that kind of stuff to you and get away with it, Katsuki." Bakugo, however, never responded to the two boys. Instead, he was walking slowly while continuously looking down at the slightly torn hero notebook with a serious expression. Now that he was replaying the scenario of what just happened back in his mind, the blonde realized that Izuku had barely even said a word throughout that whole engagement. Something was up, that was for sure. And Katsuki was gonna get to the bottom of it. Deku's never shown any signs of a spine like that before. Katsuki?" One of his followers began again. "Did you hear me? Aren't we gonna get back at Deku?" "Yeah. We should totally embarrass him in front of the whole school. That way we can get our respect back. I'm sure people will start talking bad about us after today." "TCH, Bakugo spat, a snarl coating his features as he turned and glared at the pair. "Who gives a crap what those extras think of me? Do what you want, I couldn't care less about that useless Deku." The two boys just stood there confused as they watched the boy walk off silently. What had gotten into him? Izuku didn't know how long he ran for once he left the school. All he could think about were the events that had just transpired in the cafeteria. Crap. Kachan is totally gonna to kill me tomorrow. Before he could continue with this negative train of thought though, Izuku shook his head violently as he picked up speed in his sprint. "No. Stop thinking about that. I have way bigger issues right now. Like why my fingers are all sticky now. Or what that ringing in my head was. And come to think of it, I've been running for a while now, why am I not out of breath yet?" Eventually, the green-haired teen came up onto an abandoned alleyway, slipping into it quietly and leaning against the wall. What's happening to me? What was going on? Did this have anything to do with why he looked so fit this morning? He figured that was just some fluke. He wasn't abnormally big or anything after all, and his school uniform still fit him fine. So if that wasn't from taking so many beatings and running from Kachan, then what was it? Still clueless and looking for answers, Izuku looked down at his palm glumly. Because of this stupid hand of his, he was probably about to get the beating of his life tomorrow. Why couldn't I let go? It took me almost having a heart attack about my notebook just for me to unstick myself, Izuku mumbled to himself. Squinting his eyes and getting a good look at the tips of his fingers. Are those tiny hairs? The boy practically screeched as he stared his hands down worriedly. For a moment, however, the boy stopped to think. These tiny hairs on the ends of his fingers rang a bit of a bell in his mind. I hate science. Why didn't I pay attention in biology last year? Racking his brain, the boy stood there in the alley for a few more minutes before a light bulb finally rang in his brain. Scopuli. The tiny hairs on the leg of a spider that help them grip onto things. And I think the smaller microscopic ones were called setlutes? No. Settles. Yeah. They're the reason spiders can climb on walls with so much more than their body weight. Smiling at his proud little moment of intellect, Izuku took his sweet time in realizing exactly what he just said and what it meant for him. Wait. Did I just say, spiders? In an instant, the memories of last light flooded into the teenager's mind. A very specific one about getting bit by an abnormally large, and oddly colored spider taking center spot among those memories. That spider, I knew it looked weird. There aren't any blue and red colored species in Japan. So, does that mean that a spider bite gave me a quirk? Izuku all of a sudden regretted tossing the dead spider in the dumpster the night before. He was sure it would have given him some really valuable information if he would have kept it and examined it a bit further. Well, I could always go back to that alley and go dumpster diving. But now wasn't the time for that, now was the time for answers. With a look of new determination brewing, Izuku turned around and faced the brick wall behind him. He had ended up holding off his final decision last night on whether or not he could be a hero. But now, things were different. This wasn't a guaranteed chance just yet, but it was something. And he was sure as hell gonna test it out and see it through. Carefully, the green-haired boy reached out and pressed all 5 of his right fingers against the cold surface of the brick wall. When he budged them and they felt secure, he continued and placed his left hand slightly higher and pulled. To his surprise, as well as utter joy, Izuku effortlessly pulled himself up and stuck to the wall completely. I'm doing it. I'm actually doing it. I have a quirk. He thought happily as tears surfaced in his eyes. So overcome by emotion, the boy lifted his hand, along with one foot this time, to try and continue climbing. But much to his surprise, the second his foot touched the wall and his hands let go to move up, the boy slipped off the wall and fell right back down into the alley. What the Izuku began in bewilderment as he looked down at his foot. Why did my foot slip? Do I not have any scapulae on my? The meek teenager cut his thought off and slapped his forehead for his own foolishness. Of course his feet wouldn't stick to anything. His shoes were probably blocking the settles from grabbing anything. And so, after rapidly taking off his shoes and putting them away in his backpack, Izuku began climbing the wall once again. Thankful for the fact that his settles were working through his socks as he climbed higher and higher. When he reached the top, the boy shakily sat down on the roof, the realization of what he just did still not sinking in. I actually have a quirk. This is real, I'm not dreaming, he mumbled as tears formed in his eyes once more. This was truly a dream come true. Sure, it wasn't the most flashy power out there, but it was something. Maybe after some training and some creative thinking he could make this useful for hero work. Just as his brain was getting going with crazy hero ideas and cool ways to use this power, Izuku put on the brakes and stayed silent for a moment. Okay. Hold on. Don't get ahead of yourself, Izuku. There's still more questions here than answers. Like what that ringing in my head earlier was, and why I don't get tired from running for 20 minutes straight. Also, if that weird spider really did give me this power, can I really call it a quirk? I guess I do need to pay that dumpster a visit. This is gonna suck, but I need answers. After climbing down from the small apartment building and running around town for a bit, Izuku was easily able to find the alley in which he had the encounter yesterday. Not only was the sight of it still fresh on his mind, but it was also right in his path where he walked home every day, which made things much easier. Right as the boy arrived, however, he noticed one very horrifying detail that shattered his big plan into tiny bits. No. The dumpster's empty. The trash collectors must have come and emptied it. With a heavy sigh, the superpowered teen sat down glumly right across from the big green dumpster. With nothing else to do, he let his eyes wander deeper into the alley. Surprisingly, it wasn't that much further. Just 5 or so meters from where he sat he could see that it led to nothing, a dead end. That's weird. If this alley doesn't lead anywhere, what were those two creepy guys doing here last night? Izuku thought as a chill ran down his spine from thinking of those two again. The boy was broken out of his musing though when his wandering eyes landed on a small cardboard box that was sitting against the wall deeper into the alley. Standing up and shuffling over to it for a closer look, Izuku examined the outside of it. Even going as far as to sniff the air around it to make sure he wasn't about to see a severed head inside. When all of his tests came back clear, the green-haired boy reached for the cover before stopping as he spotted some letters written in Sharpie on the lid. When it became clear to the boy that squinting really hard would not help him read in the dark, he picked up the box and moved back to the front of the alley where the sun was shining, finally able to see 3 letters written sloppily on the lid. A foe? What does that mean? Izuku mumbled to himself before finally quenching his curiosity and taking the lid off of the box. He already knew that whatever it was, it had to be substantial. When he picked it up a few seconds ago, it had a decent weight to it. Either way, he was about to find out. When the teen opened up the cardboard box at last, he saw something quite unexpected. It was both something that he was very familiar with, while also completely unknown to him. How was that possible, one might ask? Well, the answer was simple. Comic books. The box was absolutely filled to the brim with comic books. Well, that and a few VHS tapes, all items having one thing in common. They were all labeled, SpiderMan. SpiderMan? I've never heard of this guy? Is he a pro hero? What the heck are these doing here anyway? Did someone throw them out? It would make sense since they're by the dumpster, but who would throw away such a big collection? Izuku was no slouch when it came to the nerdy world of comics. He wasn't the biggest collector in the world, but he still had a decent amount of All Might ones. There were at least 20 different issues in his closet that he knew he had to have once he read them, but that was it. He wasn't some huge basement dweller or anything. This stack inside the cardboard box, however, now this was a collection. There must have been hundreds of comic books in here. Without even thinking, Izuku picked up what seemed to be the very first issue. It was labeled differently than all the other ones, and it was stacked very neatly at the very top of the pile. Amazing Fantasy number 15, Izuku read out loud with a heavy accent. It was just now dawning on him that all of these comic books were in English. This, however, did not deter the boy at all from opening up the cover and reading the first panel. Sure, his English wasn't the best, but it was very above average for a Japanese person. Being a huge fan of All Might meant learning all about his time in America. And that included learning to decipher news stories that were all completely in English. After a few minutes of confusion, the green-haired boy quickly caught on that American comics were read from left to right and began scrolling through the first issue. Page after page, Izuku's eyes widened even more. Was this some kind of joke? What was going on here? This boy Peter Parker was going through exactly what he was going through. Or is it the other way around? Izuku thought before continuing his reading. He even managed to laugh out loud when he found out that this boy in the comics also had a loud and obnoxious blonde bully. But the real juicy part came when the boy got his powers. This is where Izuku really buckled down and paid attention. He took note that the first power the boy in the comic displayed was being able to jump high and cling onto a wall to avoid a car. The boy then climbed all the way to the top and gripped a metal pipe, crushing it as if it were made of paper. What? Jumping? Super strength? Can I do that? Izuku thought out loud as he set the comic book down gently along with the others. He could feel in the paper that it was way older than the comics that he was used to dealing with, so he was going to make sure to be extra careful with them. Wanting to do a quick test to see if he could do the things that this comic character could, Izuku walked over to the dumpster and crouched down, not wasting any time in sliding his fingers underneath it and applying force. Much to the green-haired boy's surprise, he didn't even need to exert himself all that much. With ease he picked up the empty dumpster. It felt completely weightless to him. This was incredible. Was he really this strong? How did he not notice this before? And how did he not completely destroy something by accident at school today? Maybe I didn't really feel it since I'm kinda timid by nature. Pretty soon, one thought led to another, and Izuku went wide-eyed when he remembered his impromptu tug-of-war with Bakugo and how he wasn't even budging an inch against all of the blonde boy's strength. I can't believe it. I'm stronger than Kachan. Before he could get too excited though, the superpowered teen swiftly took his shoes off again and threw them to the side. Once he was ready, he crouched down once again, but this time, instead of moving his hands, he sprung up and jumped as high as he could. For what felt like the 10th time in the last 10 minutes, Izuku's mouth went wide as he soared through the air and looked down. He had to have been at least 8 or 9 meters in the air right now. Izuku was right at the peak of his jump when he reached his hands and feet out and perched softly onto the wall. It looked like he was sorta getting the hang of this sticking thing. And not only that, but he could almost see the top of the building he was attached to. This was a 5-story building. And he just jumped almost 3 of those stories. Doing his best to calm his heart rate, the green-haired boy took a deep breath and urged himself to let go of the wall. However, unlike earlier today, his body obeyed and his hands and feet became unstuck. With that, the teen landed on his feet with a small thud against the pavement. Wincing slightly as the only thing between his bare feet and the hard ground was the thin layer of his socks. That was beside the point though, he could work out something so trivial. The big thing to focus on was the fact that he finally had a way to be a hero. Right? In truth, there was still a lot of doubt in his mind, and rightfully so. He still had no one to believe in him, as well as the cruel words that still haunted his mind from his biggest hero. That and the fact that this power was still a huge mystery to him. The only things he could link them to were this alleyway where a weirdly colored spider bit him. Well, that and now this mysterious box filled with American comics that somehow showcased a hero with all the same powers as him. Oh well, one thing's for sure, I'm definitely taking these home and reading them some more. I'm sure no one will mind since they were left by the dumpster. Shigaraki moped as he shuffled through the portal and sat down at the bar back at his base, his partner following suit and closing the portal. As much as he wanted to turn Kurogiri into dust right now, he held back. Losing the specimen wasn't totally his fault after all. He shouldn't have had the Shadow Man practice his powers in such a small place as this to begin with. Still though, he was really bummed that he wouldn't be getting his favorite hero's superpowers anymore. Well, calling Spider-Man a hero would be a bit of a stretch since he was a fictional character. But still, he was still way cooler than someone like All Might and the rest of this godforsaken hero society. In the end though, he was still very surprised that Master had even granted him the spider in the first place. He knew that Master could give quirks to pretty much anything, but he didn't really know if it inconvenienced him or not. Either way though, he wasn't about to tell him flat out that he lost the thing. He had already dumped his stash of comics that he got from Master's library in hopes that his intentions with the spider weren't too obvious. Now all he needed was for this whole thing to blow over. Speaking of the wonderful man, there he was calling him right now. Crap. Ahem. Hello Master, how are you today? I am quite well, Shigaraki Tomura. How about you? I trust that things went well with the spider I sent you? Ah yes. Things are perfect. I've actually stored him away for future use. You see, I figured that I would use it to strengthen my ranks later on with other members. As you know, I am already quite satisfied with the strength of my own quirk. I see, very well. That is quite wise of you. And I also trust that Kurogiri is progressing soundly? Yes, Master, he's been a great help. One of the most versatile quirks I've ever had the pleasure of witnessing. Very good, I will inform you of any other Nomus that make a significant breakthrough. Thank you, Master, I appreciate that. Right when it appeared that the call was about to end and relieve the pale-skinned man, the dark menacing voice on the other end spoke one last time. Ah yes, and one more thing, my young disciple. Why yes, Master? Please take good care of that specimen I gave you. I've had the power that resides in it for quite a long time. It's from my younger days, and I'm sure that I don't need to remind you how much those meant to me. Why yes, of course, Master, will do, Shigaraki said with an audible gulp. Chapter 3, A Little Pick-Me-Up. Inko Midoriya was very particular when it came to Izuku. Before these past few days, she thought she had her son read down to a T. Anytime something was wrong, she could usually get him to tell her what it was, and that was that. But lately, Izuku was all over the place. First, he comes back insanely late from school with little to no explanation whatsoever. And now, just yesterday, he came back as happy as could be. She had never seen the boy display so much happiness and energy before. It was honestly alarming. That and the fact that she had gotten a call from the school last night that her son had missed the entire second half of the day. Now it was early the next morning, and Izuku still looked quite energetic as he wolfed down his breakfast in only a couple minutes. She watched cautiously as her son got up and wiped his mouth, a satisfied smile gracing his lips. Bye, Mom. I don't want to be late again. Of course, dear. Make sure you finish school today, she said back as she watched his form disappear out the door. What is going on with him? I thought only teenage girls were supposed to be this confusing. Izuku walked to school with a little extra pep in his step today. He might not have been exactly overflowing with confidence now, but he still had a quirk, right? Well, maybe not. After spending the better part of last night reading as many issues of The Amazing Spider-Man as he could, he figured out a couple more things about his powers in general. One thing was that they were probably just that, powers. It didn't make sense for him to have multiple quirks at the same time in the exact same way that Peter did. Even if he was just a fictional character, it just wasn't probable. This made the most sense to him for two big reasons. One was the glaring fact that quirks obviously couldn't be transferred from person to person. He learned that the spider that bit Peter Parker altered his DNA in order to give him spider-like traits. And as crazy as that sounded, it was still more believable than giving a quirkless person a completely new quirk gene. Given what he knew about quirks, which to be fair, was a lot. That shouldn't be possible. The second reason behind his theory was what he had just thought earlier: Spider-Man wasn't real. When the hero's name wasn't ringing any bells, the boy did an online search and came up with nothing. And considering that there was no hero society in the comics he was reading, it meant that it had to just be American fiction. Either way, after school later, he was going to stop by his local comic shop and ask one of the employees who worked there. Maybe they knew something that he didn't. He even brought an issue with him to show them in his backpack. If his memory served him correctly, it was issue number 13. But that was beside the point. On top of the non-quirk status of his powers, Izuku cleared up one other big thing that had been bothering him. In issue number 2, he learned that the ringing in his head was called a spider sense, and it was incredibly useful. It essentially warned him ahead of time whenever something was about to harm or affect him in any negative way. To him, that was easily one of his coolest powers considering it had saved his bacon the day before, but super strength was definitely a close second. Another useful tip the boy picked up from the comics was that he could apparently heal his body much faster than a normal human could. Which he already knew was going to come in handy. One of these days I really need to go somewhere deserted and test out my powers at their full potential. Who knows? Maybe I can lift up an entire semi-truck. And maybe my healing factor works on more than just wounds, maybe I'm immune to diseases too. School mostly flew by that day for the young green-haired boy. And as far as he could tell, things were okay on the side of his bullies as well. Bakugo and his friends never even so much as grazed him today. All he got was a dirty snarl from the blonde every time they made eye contact. Izuku figured he must have been biding his time before he went all out and murdered him, but for once, he wasn't worried. He had what he needed to defend himself now, so things were good now. Okay, so maybe he was still a tiny bit scared of Kacchan, and maybe he wasn't as courageous as he thought he was. But could you blame him? One little good day doesn't necessarily erase a whole lot of bad ones. Still though, He definitely felt more sure of himself now that he had powers. But at the same time, he wasn't about to use them to get back at Kacchan either. He'd read about what Peter went through for not using his powers responsibly. And he was not about to make the same mistakes as him. One could even say that the lesson of responsibility was instilled into Izuku more firmly because of how big a fanboy he was by nature. Wow, Spider-Man sure is growing on me fast. He's not even a real pro and I already look up to him. Izuku thought to himself as he exited the school. He had actually let his mom know ahead of time what his plans were after school, courtesy of his backup phone. Except she thought he was going for some of his nerdy All Might merchandise, not to get an opinion on some comics he found in a random alleyway. Yikes, just thinking of All Might now left a frown on the boy's face as he walked down the street in silence. He had looked up to him for so long only to be crushed without a second thought from the man. But at least now I have a chance to become a hero. Izuku told himself with all the strength he could muster. The real question now was, did he believe it? Did he truly believe with his whole being that he could be a hero? He was inclined to say yes and move forward, but something stopped him, and he knew exactly what it was. How? How can I do it? No one believes in me. Heck, I barely believe in myself. If I'm still scared of Kacchan at school, then how the hell am I supposed to become a hero? Hiya. The boy was broken out of his thoughts when he heard a loud shout from down the street. It sounded like it had come from multiple people at the same time, like a synchronized cry. Looking around and realizing where he was, the boy soon found out he was close to the comic shop, which was admittedly a bit far from his house. He was somewhat familiar with the area, but he still took the time to look around and inspect the street he was on. There was a small coffee shop right on the corner, as well as a variety of other shops across the street from where he was standing. But those places weren't what grabbed his attention. Hiya. There it was again, and that was all the confirmation the green-haired boy needed to walk across the street and peer into the open window of the small little fighting dojo. It was surprisingly roomy inside, fitting what looked to be at least 50 disciples as they practiced striking all together in perfect harmony. The sensei looked to be quite strong as well. And something about his orange hair looked very familiar to Izuku. He must have been an old pro, but he wouldn't know for sure until he consulted one of his notebooks. Hiya. The superpowered teen must have sat there for an entire half hour watching the students practice and hone their skills. It really got him thinking about all the tools heroes needed to have out in the field. I guess that's another thing I'm gonna need if I want to be a hero. I'm gonna need to know how to fight. Izuku thought glumly, once again thinking ill of himself as he continued to watch how amazing all the students were. How the heck was he supposed to get to a level like them? What are you doing? Ah! Izuku shrieked in a little higher of a pitch than he would have preferred as the new voice confronted him. Turning around, he saw that there was an orange-haired girl giving him an odd look, as well as a tall indigo-haired guy standing behind her somewhat timidly. Though that wasn't what Izuku first observed about the boy, no, what really got to him was the boy's school uniform. That guy. He goes to UA. But Izuku didn't have time to keep thinking because the girl was already talking again. You know you don't have to just watch, right? Go in there and sign up. It's really friendly, she said with a winning smile. I don't think is she talking to me? Why is she talking to me? Why is a girl talking to me? After a few seconds of hearing some very heavy stuttering, the orange-haired girl rolled her teal eyes and sighed. Why was she a magnet for these types of people? Maybe it was because she lived in a fighting studio, but she'd seen plenty of guys like this before. And much like the others, he probably wanted to join the dojo to get a little confidence boost. And hey, more power to him. It's what she had been trying to get her friend behind her to do for a long time, but Tamaki just wouldn't budge. Oh well, at least I have the patience to deal with these guys. Seriously, it's fine, go right on in and sign up. Let's just say I'm close with the management here and they're good people. What's your name? She said kindly once again, this time extending her hand for a friendly shake. Izuku could barely form a coherent sentence in his mind right now, so he was damn sure that if he opened his mouth, things were gonna go south fast. But he couldn't just run away right here, right? No. Sorry. I didn't mean to, I've gotta go. With that, Izuku took off as fast as he could in the opposite direction, leaving the girl hanging as she frowned and lowered her hand. Turning a corner and breathing heavily, the green-haired boy did his best to collect his nerves and stomp them out. What the heck was that? My first conversation with a girl and I totally messed it up. Why was that so hard? I could barely even think. It probably didn't help that she was really cute too. Should I go and apologize? Figuring that an apology was the best course of action, Izuku walked back around the corner and breathed a sigh of relief when the two teens were still standing in front of the dojo. But what the boy didn't expect was that the girl seemed to be chewing out the guy for some reason. What was that all about? Without another moment's notice, Izuku looked around quickly. When he was sure the coast was clear, he climbed up onto the small building neighboring the dojo. From there, it was only a small hop and he was in a perfect position, perching himself right over the two teens and getting an earful of their whole conversation. Don't even get me started on this, Tamaki. You are an amazing student. And you're gonna be an even better hero someday. I don't understand why you keep doubting yourself. I know, you say that all the time, Itsuka, but you don't understand what I'm going through. Mirio has been so busy lately. It's only been a couple of days, but I barely even see him anymore. Something about some special training. And how does that affect you? Are you jealous or something? The girl huffed, she was clearly becoming irritated. No. Of course not. Actually, it's just the opposite. I'm unbelievably happy for him. It's just, sometimes I feel like I'm nothing when he's not around. I guess I just rely on his confidence rubbing off on me, you know? He was the first person to ever believe in me. Izuku widened his eyes at the unexpected turn this conversation was taking. He knew that this was getting really personal and that he should probably just go, but something inside him kept him glued to his spot on the dojo's roof. So far this conversation had hit really close to home for him, and he wanted to see it through. Who knows? Maybe he could find a way to help this obviously timid-natured UA student. Oh my goodness, is that really it? Don't say that, Tamaki. How many times do I have to tell you that you're amazing on your own until you believe me? When the girl got no response, she simply sighed, rubbed her temples and hunkered down. Alright, I'm tired of seeing you like this, Tamaki. Time for you to cowboy up and be your own best friend. You're not always gonna have someone that's there to believe in you. It sucks, but that's just life. It happens to everyone, so you know what you do? You get up, you don't take crap from anyone, and you believe in yourself. Who cares what someone else thinks? As long as you believe in yourself, then you'll never be alone. Yes, Tagata-san is your friend, but you shouldn't let him affect you this extremely. At the end of the day, you're the one that has to fight your own battles, not him, so believe in yourself, man. I'll try, thank you, Itsuka, you're a good friend. The boy said shakily. A small hint of a smile appeared on the girl's lips before she turned around and began walking into the dojo. Don't mention it, Tamaki, I meant every word. Now if you'll excuse me, I'm already late for training. Talk to you later. Once the orange-haired girl disappeared behind the doors of the dojo, the boy dropped his confident smile in favor of slumped shoulders and a look of despair. Aw man, is that really what I look like all the time? Izuku thought with a frown. If anything, he felt pity for the boy. He was going through something very similar himself. But one big difference that was just now sinking into Izuku was the conversation he just heard. While the UA student sort of just brushed it off as if it were just blind encouragement, Izuku began letting the words sink deep into his mind. Thinking about them more and more with every passing second. As long as you believe in yourself, then you'll never be alone. Izuku didn't know how many times he kept repeating that phrase in his head. All he knew was that each time he thought about it hit harder than the last, never failing to bring goosebumps to the surface of his skin. How could I have been so blind? Izuku mumbled as he took the backpack off of his shoulders and opened it up. Before long, the green-haired teen pulled out his copy of The Amazing Spider-Man number 13. This whole time, the answer was right in front of me. Who cares what someone else thinks? I've had these powers for almost 2 days now. Why did I hesitate? He mumbled once more, gripping the comic book in his hand tightly as tears surfaced in his eyes. I can do it, I can be a hero, Izuku cried out to the sky, finally letting his emotions bubble over and tears slip down his cheeks. I really need to find a chance to go back and thank her. Thanks for having the food ready, Mom, but I've got a lot of homework, so I'm gonna take this to my room. Oh, well, I guess that's okay, Izuku, the frail-looking woman said softly. Staying silent for a moment before speaking up. I'm glad you're feeling better, Izuku. You look more sure of yourself somehow. Did you decide on a new career choice yet? I saw the forms you brought home the other day about high schools. And I think it's really brave that you were able to cross out UA like that. Izuku froze in his tracks on his trek back to his room, stiffening up almost immediately as he felt his shoulders begin to slump. Who cares what someone else thinks? Widening his eyes in realization, the green-haired boy stopped his shoulders and reversed their movement, pushing them back and standing prouder than he ever had before in his life. With fire in his eyes and conviction in his heart, Izuku turned back to his mother, a determined smile displayed profoundly on his lips. Nope, that was a mistake, Mom. I'm definitely gonna get into UA next year. Just you wait. Without another word, the boy turned back around and walked right into his room and closed the door behind him softly, leaving his mother completely speechless. Izuku, I have never seen you like this before. What's going on with you? Conviction. He finally had the conviction to step up and do what he wanted to do with his life. That, as well as the means to get there. Now all he had to do was apply himself and make it all come true. Thank you, random redhead girl. I'll never forget what you did for me today. You may not even know what you did, but that's okay, I swear I'll make it up to you one day. But for now, I'm really gonna do it. I'm gonna be the greatest pro hero ever, Spider-Man. Chapter 4, Into the Swing of Things. Now that Izuku was all in on becoming Spider-Man, he needed to buckle down and prepare himself from multiple different angles. Normally he would have been weary of completely ripping off something as important as an entire hero identity, even if it was fiction. But considering that not even the biggest nerd he knew recognized his new red and blue friend, he would let it slide for now. I really hope no one ends up recognizing me, I wouldn't want to get sued or something. However, soon the superpowered teen shook himself out of the silly thought as he found the page he was looking for. It was currently very early Saturday morning, the day after he made his awe-inspiring decision that he could in fact become a hero. And right now specifically, he was standing on the ceiling in his room rereading Amazing Fantasy number 15. There it is, found it, he mumbled, biting his thumb gently as he read the panels over multiple times. The specific page he was on showed Peter Parker constructing some kind of support item for his wrists, his so-called web shooters. Ugh, Izuku grunted, allowing his bare feet to unstick from the ceiling and landing on his floor softly. He had already read through the page a couple times, and nowhere in any of the panels were any parts or ingredients mentioned. Oh well, I figured the comic books wouldn't have all the answers. I guess I'm gonna have to use my brain for this part. While it was true that Izuku was no slouch when it came to his intellect and grades, placing second in his middle school class right behind Bakugo, he knew that it wouldn't be sufficient for the kind of things he was planning. Speaking modestly, his grades were completely unmatched in English, Japanese, and history. But in order to create such a complex mechanism, as well as the chemical formula to produce the ammunition, his not-so-perfect math, physics, and chemistry grades were gonna need a lot more effort put into them. Of course all three of my worst subjects are part of the things I'm missing. I'm gonna have to ask some of my teachers if they're willing to teach me extra after school. The green-haired boy was no doubt gonna dread that specific part of his plan. Especially when he was sure his quirkless status was gonna affect the answers of some teachers. But such a small obstacle was not about to stop him, not now after he finally had some confidence in himself. I'll do it. It'll be worth it in the end, and I know I can pull it off if I study hard enough. Watch out, Kachan. I'm coming for your number 1 seat. Just as Izuku was getting pumped up at the thought of the brand new challenge, another idea popped into his mind. One that he could start even sooner than Monday. Maybe he could go to a bookstore and buy some college textbooks. He was planning on going out today to test his powers fully anyway, he could easily make a couple stops along the way. Hurrying to pick up his wallet, the green-haired boy checked it with hope in his heart that he would have some spare change lying around, but to no avail. He was severely lacking funds. Darn, why did I have to buy that new All Might figurine last month, he said with a sigh. Looking around his room and seeing all of his symbol of peace memorabilia, Izuku couldn't help but feel a little bit awkward about it. It wasn't that it made him mad to have to stare at it all the time or anything, but he would be lying if he said that it didn't feel kinda wrong. Do I really not like All Might anymore? Pondering the question more deeply, Izuku did his best to take out his bias. At the end of the day, All Might probably didn't mean to be as cruel as he felt when he said those words to him. The number 1 hero was just looking out for his safety, and that was that, right? Well, yes, but also no. Sure, to All Might, that might have been the right thing to say. But to Izuku, no matter how good his intentions were, it didn't make it hurt any less. And now that he ended up with powers and a chance to rewrite his story, worshipping him like this just didn't feel right. Reaching out gently to one of his more expensive All Might figurines, Izuku took it off of his shelf and looked at its perfect condition. It was still in the box, the very same box that it was put in when it was made. He was standing in his signature victory pose, as well as wearing his iconic Silver Age costume. It was a product that truly lived up to the name limited edition. Dancing circles inside of his brain, Izuku was at an impasse. He knew for a fact that he could very easily sell this thing at the comic shop for at least 50,000 yen, which would definitely be enough for some good quality textbooks and then some. But now the only question was, should he do it? He remembered exactly when he got this figurine. It was from his mother back on his 10th birthday, which made it undoubtedly one of his most prized possessions. Shutting his eyes tight and clenching his teeth, Izuku fought back the tears he knew were coming. He needed to be strong, he wanted to be a hero now, no more fairy tales. He finally had the opportunity to become everything he ever wanted, as well as the backing of someone who would always be with him, himself. That's right. He believed in himself. And he had made a commitment. He would not break it on the very first day. Winning the battle against his threatening tears, the superpowered teen grabbed his backpack and placed the All Might figurine inside of it, along with a brand new hero notebook labeled number 14. With that, he got dressed and collected his things once again before walking out the door to his room. He had an agenda and he was going to stick to it, even if it killed him. Alright then, Hero Analysis Journal for the Future number 14, Entry 1, SpiderMan. Izuku mumbled what he wrote as he began his first entry in his new notebook. It was actually pretty handy not having to come up with a hero name. Without SpiderMan, he probably would have ended up naming himself some kind of lame variation of All Might's name. Last night he had also begun his rough sketch of his hero costume. This was also rather effortless considering he didn't want to change up the comic version too much, it was really starting to grow on him. One thing he did want to change though, was the color scheme, but he was still undecided on what shade of green he should use. Oh well, I can always think about that later, right now I should get to why I came here. At the moment, Izuku was standing in a huge pile of garbage at his town's very own local junkyard. And by junkyard, he meant the hideous Dagoba beach. Apparently this place had gone from a popular tourist attraction to a garbage dump in the matter of just a few years from people littering. But this was the last thing on the green-haired boy's mind as he stretched his body and prepared himself for what was to come. He was here for one reason, and one reason only, to find out the limit to his enhanced strength. The sun was almost fully out over the horizon when Izuku finished his little warm-up. And so, not wanting to waste any more time, the boy leapt off his pile of trash and landed on the biggest appliance he could find. Inspecting what looked to be a giant security safe, the superpowered teen nodded in satisfaction and prepared to lift it. It was at least 4 times his size and looked dense as hell, so he was a bit more careful with this one. But much like his encounter with the dumpster, it was still pretty easy for him to lift off the ground. Izuku thought as he looked around the ruined beach, the safe still comfortably in his hands. When his eyes found what they were looking for, he didn't hesitate to jump over to it with the safe on his back. Perfect, Izuku said happily, placing the safe on top of a scrapped-up car. It was missing all 4 of its wheels and looked like it hadn't moved from this spot in years. But to the green-haired boy's pleasant surprise, it still had a motor, which was visible due to the fact that it was lacking a hood to cover it. Nice. With the motor inside of it, it should be close to its full weight. Which I'm guessing is around 1,800 kilograms, along with the safe, which should be another 500 or so kg. Now, assuming that the logic in the comics is sound, then the super strength comes from being able to lift multiple times my body weight, just like a spider can. And I read online that most spiders can lift between 150 to 200 times their own body weight, so let's just settle on 175 for the sake of balance. Now, last night when I was doing my research, I also weighed myself for the first time since I got my powers. And I gained a considerable amount of weight, going from 48 kilograms to a whopping 60. So knowing that, all I have to do is multiply that by 175 and I have a rough estimate of my weight limit. I can see why I'm gonna need to get better at math now, this is so hard. Little did Izuku know that he had been mumbling that entire time, much to the amusement of a blonde-haired, blue-eyed individual that was now watching him on top of a pile of trash. Rather than interrupting his train of thought, however, the blonde merely sat back and watched as Izuku worked out the problem in his head and came to his solution. Got it. If my math is right, then my limit should be right around 10,000 kilograms. Wow, that's pretty impressive. Huh? Izuku jumped and turned, the new voice scaring the daylights out of him. Oh, sorry about that. I didn't mean to scare you. The superpowered teen looked the newcomer up and down, trying to figure out why he looked so familiar. He had blonde hair combed back neatly, and blue beady eyes that came off as very friendly to Izuku. It was also obvious that the boy was physically strong, he had a presence about him that somehow just oozed confidence. No. It's fine. I just didn't expect anyone to be out here this early, Izuku started. I guess, I just space out sometimes when I'm deep in thought. Haha. I understand what you mean, and I honestly didn't expect to see anyone out here either. I'm actually a little early for my regular training. That caught Izuku's attention. Huh? Training? What do you mean? All of a sudden, the blonde teen paled as though he had just given something crucial away. But he was fast to recover and respond to the superpowered teen. Oh, it's just this training program that I started a few days ago. Which reminds me, my, personal trainer is gonna be here soon, and he's pretty strict about not wasting time, so if it's not too much trouble, do you think you could wrap up what you're doing? I really don't want to disappoint him. The green-haired teen listened on with curiosity, pausing for a moment at the odd request that he was given. He knew that he didn't have to comply with it if he didn't want to, this was a public beach after all. But this boy had come off pleasant enough as far as he could tell, so he didn't mind humoring him. Oh, sure, I don't mind. But do you think you could give a couple minutes? I really wanted to experiment with something at least once so I could get some data to work with. The blonde boy visibly relaxed at the response he got, once again putting on his wide smile and shooting Izuku a big thumbs up. You got it. I won't lie, I was wondering what all those numbers you were mumbling were about anyways. So let's see it. Is there any way I could help? Smiling at how kind the boy was, Izuku shook his head gently. Hey, yeah, sorry again about my mumbling. And no, I think I've got it all worked out now. I was calculating a ballpark estimate for my, Q-quirk strength limit, and if all the math is right, then it should be about 10,000 kilos. The boy stuttered, still not used to lying about his powers. Oh wow. That's amazing. The blonde sprung up from his seat, genuine happiness written on his face. Yeah, I guess it's pretty awesome. But now I have to test it. This car with this military safe on top of it should be somewhere in the range of 2,000 kilos, which would be about 1/5 of my supposed max. So now I'm gonna lift it up and see if it feels that way. Wow. You were running all those numbers in your head without a calculator? You must be really smart, Realizing that the boy was waiting for his name, the super-powered teen spoke up. Izuku Midoriya. Haha. Well then, nice to meet you Midoriya-san. Mirio Tagata at your service. Izuku's face remained blank as once again a bell rang in his head about the boy after hearing his name. But he quickly shook it off and responded as to not seem rude to the boy. Oh of course, likewise Tagata-san. I meant what I said though, you sure are smart. It would have taken me years to run those calculations in my head. And the way you're testing your max is smart too. I would have just run up to big objects at random until I couldn't lift one anymore, ha ha ha. The green-haired teen managed a small chuckle at Tagata's playful banter, but before long, he got back to work. Opening up his notebook and preparing to mark down if his theory was right or not based on the coming results. Alright, here we go, Izuku said, stepping up to the car and crouching down into a power position. Tagata watched on with curiosity as well. While the boy was many times smaller than the object in front of him, it was obvious that he had some sort of strength quirk to make up for that. Either that, or he had just been blowing hot air this entire time. But much to the blonde's surprise, after a few seconds of waiting, Izuku did in fact lift up the weight placed in front of him. And rather easily at that. Tagata almost couldn't believe how effortlessly the boy transferred the weight onto his back, now holding all of it up above his shoulders and pressing it up over his head. It was truly a bizarre picture, that was for sure. But what Tagata couldn't see, was what Izuku was feeling on the inside. And as much as he hated to admit it, the weight he was currently holding wasn't as light as it looked in his hands. Wow, it's not really that easy anymore, but this definitely isn't my limit. I'd say that my ballpark estimate of 10,000 kilograms is pretty accurate, and that's just what I can lift. I'm sure I could handle even more if all I had to do was hold it. After a few more seconds of grunts and general discomfort for the green-haired boy, he slowly brought the weight down before gently placing it onto the ground. Phew. Wow, that was awesome, Izuku shouted in excitement. He just lifted a car. How cool was that? Heck yeah it was. How was the weight? To me it looked like you barely even felt it. Izuku nodded, explaining the conclusion that he had already come to. It felt good. It definitely wasn't easy by any means, but I'm sure I could go way higher, especially under stress. I'd say my original calculations are right on target. Tagata smiled. This had been an odd, but welcome start to his normally painful and rigorous mornings. And this boy was quite the character as well, he wanted to know more about him already. The blonde was just about to open his mouth to ask the green-haired teen exactly what his quirk was, but suddenly, he felt a buzzing in his pocket, and dread filled his head in a matter of moments. Taking out his cell phone, Tagata opened the text message, already knowing who it was from. I'm 5 minutes away, you better be there already warmed up. The blank expression he was giving dropped like a stone, and it was obvious too, because even Izuku seemed somewhat worried. Tagata-san? Are you alright? He asked, concern etched all over his face. Huh? Oh yeah. I'm great. But that was my trainer. He said he's on his way, and I need to be ready when he gets here. I'm sorry for doing this to you. I didn't want to impede your training or anything. Oh, don't worry about it, I got what I came here for, Izuku stated, happily picking up his notebook and collecting his backpack. I can record the data once I'm out of your hair. Tagata's smile shined brightly, once more back at 100%. Thank you so much, Midoriya-san. It was a pleasure meeting you. I hope we get to cross paths again someday. Izuku matched the boy's smile wholeheartedly, nodding in agreement. Same to you, Tagata-san, and thanks for being so cool about letting me use my quirk too. I know some people are nitpicky about the law and stuff like that. Haha. Of course. Believe me, I find myself using mine when I can too. If not for the time constraint that he was under, Izuku would have asked the boy what his quirk was in a heartbeat. But now was obviously not the time for that, he needed to show this boy the same kindness he had been shown. So for now, it was time to go. Hooking his backpack around his shoulders and holding onto his notebook tightly, Izuku bent his knees and sprung up off the sand, easily clearing the beach and clinging onto the side of a building. Once he was secure, he began climbing up steadily, disappearing at the top once he reached it. Wow! What a cool guy. I really hope I run into him again. That sure is a versatile quirk. Izuku couldn't seem to stop smiling as he jumped from rooftop to rooftop on his way to the comic book shop. Not only did he just have a successful social interaction, but he also just lifted up a freaking car. Oh yeah, I should write down what I learned. I still can't believe my limit is 10,000 kilos. That's insane. The superpowered teen thought proudly as he stopped on a rooftop and opened his notebook. He doubted he would ever forget such crucial information as this, but it was still a good idea to have everything documented. While the green-haired boy wrote down his newfound information, his mind wandered to the other thing that he was excited about for some reason. To most people, having a normal and fluid social interaction was just as easy as breathing. To him it obviously wasn't, but that still didn't make it worth celebrating over, right? Finishing up his writing, Izuku closed his new notebook and put it down, instead bringing his focus onto his open palm. The more he thought about it, the more it confused him. He was absolutely sure that if he had met Tagata-san just a few days ago, he would have been a stuttering mess. So what was the difference now? He felt like he was in control of himself completely that whole conversation. Sure, he was caught off guard when the guy showed up out of nowhere, but he recovered almost immediately. Did my powers somehow give me more confidence? Izuku thought as he squeezed his hand into a fist. Sure, he had joked about it the other day when he was just thinking about defending himself from Kachan, but that was just in theory, he would never actually fight back, right? He had even said it himself, one good day doesn't cancel out a million bad ones. Or does it? Especially if that one good day is really, really good. Oh well, there was no point in wasting time thinking about it. It wasn't like he would all of a sudden turn into a social extrovert overnight. Not that he wanted to in the first place. Being too timid may have had its downsides, but it was still who he was, and he liked that. He could afford to grow out of it a little, of course, but he didn't want to go too overboard and lose himself at the same time. I guess it's just human nature to gain a little confidence when you get stronger. The teen shrugged off as he collected his notebook and leapt off the building once again. Throughout all of these self-esteem related thoughts, there was one thing Izuku was 100% sure of. If he was a sputtering mess after talking to a girl for the first time, even with superpowers, he did not want to think about what it would have been like without them. Electrical, civil, structural, mechanical. There it is. The teen thought ecstatically, grabbing the textbook from the shelf and looking it over. Here it is. A college-level mechanical engineering textbook. That should be everything. Satisfied with what was in his hands, Izuku placed the book on top of his already existing stack and went to pay. Waiting his turn in line, the boy couldn't help but bubble over at all the things he was going to learn over the next year. He had no doubt that strengthening these subjects would really balance him out as a student. He was already well above average, but he wanted to be better, for multiple reasons. Wow, I'm actually excited to learn about math and science for once. Izuku thought playfully, knowing full well that his new hero-related interest in the subjects would only push him to master them that much more. Next in line, please. Stepping up, and placing his stack consisting of math, physics, chemistry and mechanical engineering onto the counter, the green-haired teen pulled out his newly filled wallet and grinned widely at its contents. As it turned out, that specific Silver Age All Might figurine had become quite rare in the last few years. So rare in fact, that its value had nearly doubled, giving Izuku the crazy payout of 85,000 yen. And after hearing a number like that, it was pretty easy to let go of his small remaining attachment to it. Sir? The lady behind the counter spoke up, getting the teen's attention. Are you sure you want these specific textbooks? You look pretty young, and these are meant for college students that are studying just one of them for a focus degree. Are you sure you want all four? Never wavering for a second, Izuku only smiled and nodded his head. Yes ma'am, I'm sure, thank you for your concern though. I know it won't be easy, but I know I can learn all this stuff. 10 months, that's how long I have. I'm way behind on both my brain and my powers, but I'm devoted now, and I believe in myself. So watch out UA, Spider-Man is coming for you. Izuku moaned groggily, doing his best to wipe the fatigue from his eyes as he worked in one of the textbooks. It had been a solid first week so far from when he first purchased said textbooks. He had been working in each one of them diligently, solving every problem that each textbook presented him with, or at least trying to. Sometimes when a problem was too advanced, he would consult the internet on how to work it out. Which he felt was like every other problem in the physics and chemistry textbook. Seriously, who thought it was a good idea to add letters to math? Either way, he was still just as committed as when he first started, so he would persevere. Even if that meant losing a few hours of sleep every day. At least Tonto-sensei agreed to give me some more physics and chemistry lessons after school every day. Maybe I can even ask him about all the stuff that confuses me in the textbook too. Izuku shut his eyes again and yawned, satisfied with that thought. He would definitely be asking a lot of questions until he got the hang of things as far as science went. He was already lucky enough that he even accepted his request in the first place. His math teacher had denied him before he could even finish his pitch. He would be lying if he said he didn't see that one coming though. Math class was typically where he got picked on the most, be it by Ka-chan or anyone else. He had a feeling that his math teacher had it out for him. Oh well, at least I'm getting help in both of my sciences, that's where I struggle the most anyway. But just like any hero, Izuku couldn't grow complacent by just working on his mind, which is why he had begun going back to Dagoba Beach in the afternoons for his own version of training. He made sure that he wasn't interrupting Tagata-san's training by checking one morning. And just as he expected, the boy was there. It seemed that his training consisted of cleaning all of the heavy junk off of the beach, as well as having his unusually skinny-looking personal trainer chew him out when he was getting tired. Izuku's training, however, was a fair bit different. As well as more relaxed, seeing as how he was all by himself. Which was honestly starting to seem more and more like a good thing. Sure, things got lonely sometimes, but he was never a social person anyway, so he was used to it. His hero training, as he liked to call it, was both milking as much information as he could out of his comic books, and doing his best to replicate it. Some days he would work on agility and acrobatics while moving. Which was interesting to say the least. He was no gymnast of course, but he was very much baffled when he found out how easy it was to do a flip once you got over the fear. On other days, he would attempt to teach himself how to fight. Which, he wouldn't lie, was kinda hard by himself. He was sure that to a more trained eye, his punches and kicks looked sloppy at best, but the way he saw things, he could make up for bad form with raw power behind his blows. Which brought him to yet another setback, his own strength. After wildly throwing punches and managing to accidentally destroy a metal washing machine with a single punch, Izuku quickly figured out that he was going to have to hold back to avoid accidentally killing someone. Maybe it wouldn't end up mattering much when he went up against a villain, but he certainly didn't want to accidentally mess up another student when he got into UA. The boy found himself smiling at the way his brain was working now. He really did it, he truly believed in himself now. His first thought about something happening at UA was when he got in, not if. Patience and commitment, there wasn't anything a man couldn't do if he had both of those. He was ready, nothing was gonna stop him. Aw man, I still need to find time to go give that girl a visit, don't I? He complained softly, already putting that event off and throwing it to the back of his mind. Pretty soon, the days started to bleed together for Izuku as he fell into a new schedule. Every day was essentially the same, but he didn't care. He knew with every passing day that he was getting closer and closer to his dream. 6 a.m. Wake up. 6 a.m. to 7 a.m. Read comics. 7 a.m. to 3 p.m. School. 3 p.m. to 5 p.m. Science tutoring with Tonto-sensei. 5 p.m. to 8 p.m. Spider training at Dagoba Beach. 8 p.m. to 12 a.m. Textbook work. Day in and day out Izuku pushed himself as hard as he could. Doing everything he could to both increase his brain power and get caught up on getting used to his quirk. And after only a couple of months into his grind, both of those goals were seeing major improvements. On the physical side, the green-haired boy was starting to feel a lot more comfortable in his own skin, so to say. He now had almost complete control over his settles, priding himself on how fast he could crawl in any direction now. He had even begun working on steadying himself on a wall with just his feet in hopes of being able to run up vertical surfaces too, but he still had ways to go until he had that much control. On the side of his studies, he really felt like he was making significant progress every day. It was like everything he learned was tying into his hero training. He couldn't count how many times he'd found himself getting all excited just for making a quick and correct inference when solving a problem just like Peter would. It sure was a great motivator. On top of that, his tutoring at school couldn't have been going better. Not only was Tanto-sensei nice enough to help him with the parts of his textbooks that confused him, but he was also just plain nice in general. Wait, hold on. So the weight placed on a pendulum bob has no effect on swing speed? Izuku asked, scratching his head in confusion as he waited for to answer. Correct, speed and acceleration are not dependent on weight when it comes to something swinging. However, it does heavily affect momentum, so don't forget to factor that into your calculation. Momentum. That's what it was. Thank you, Tanto-sensei. The boy exclaimed ecstatically as he scribbled something down. The older man couldn't help but smile warmly at the boy. In a way, he reminded him of himself when he was younger. Ha, of course Midoriya-san, but I do believe that will be it for today. Time sure does manage to get away from us, doesn't it? Izuku abruptly stopped his note-taking to glance up at the clock, a small trace of a frown displaying on his lips. What? I could have sworn that we just got here. Ha. That's what happens when you're passionate about learning, Midoriya-san. I'm so glad you took initiative and decided to try and push for a perfect grade in my class. You really are a natural sponge, my boy, soaking up everything I throw at you. Smiling at the praise from the older man, Izuku rubbed his fingers together nervously. In all honesty, he had been waiting for an opportunity to speak with the man and show him some basic schematics for some web shooters that he had drawn up. The man had already gone above and beyond as far as physics and chemistry tutoring went. He sometimes even went as far as to explain how to read blueprints when he mentioned he was studying mechanical engineering. Tanto-sensei? Do you mind if I show you something? It's kinda personal, but I thought you might have some helpful advice. The gray-haired man adjusted his glasses and looked at his student oddly. Oh, well, I wouldn't say that I give the best personal advice, Midoriya-san. I'm more of a facts and logic kind of guy. I'm not too good with feelings and emotions. That's perfect, Izuku exclaimed, flipping to a specific page in his hero notebook and walking up to the teacher's desk. Sorry, I guess I didn't really mean it's personal, it's just hero related. I've been working on this support item for a while now. I used what you taught me about blueprints and made a pretty good plan for a prototype. Do you think you could take a look at it for me? Oh, good, if that's all it is, then of course Midoriya-san, said politely, taking the notebook and looking the open page over. After just a few seconds of examining the impromptu drawing, the older man widened his eyes at the design. Not only was it thoroughly detailed, but it also seemed practical and doable in a way. Although it certainly wouldn't be easy, that much was for sure. Oh wow. So, what do you think? Looking back up at his student with still wide eyes, gave the boy his feedback. What do I think? Midoriya-san, this is incredible. How did you come up with this? Oh, just some ideas I've had, gotta think outside the box. Hey. A web shooter? It's certainly weird, I'll tell you that much, but also very creative. You've got something big here, Midoriya-san. If you ever need any help at all or have any questions when you get to manufacturing them, please let me know and I'll help out however I can. Oh really? Wow. Thank you so much, Tanto-sensei. That would be incredible. Haha. It's no problem, son, just keep studying hard and I'll help you out with anything you need. This is perfect. With Tanto-sensei's advice and help, I could probably start working on a prototype somewhat soon. He's right though, I can't slack off just because I caught a break. I've got to keep studying hard and keep learning all I can. The more the boy developed his mind, the easier certain answers were coming to him. And by the time a couple more months rolled around, he had begun to do some tinkering in his room. I think I got it. Finally. With very tired, yet very happy eyes, the super-powered teen placed a bracelet-like object onto his wrist and clicked it into place, letting it settle in as his excitement boiled over. This is so awesome. I finally finished the prototype. Now I just need to make the ammo. Without wasting another second, Izuku pressed his middle and ring finger into his palm, aiming the device on his wrist at a spot in his room where he had set up some empty soda cans. The cartridge that was currently loaded into the prototype web shooter was filled to the brim with water as a substitute since he was still working out the formula for his fluid, but it would do for now. Click. Huh? Izuku questioned, looking down at the device and pressing the mechanism again with a little bit more force. Crack. In the blink of an eye, the boy watched as a month of work went down the drain as water exploded from the cartridge and the main firing mechanism fell apart. No, he yelled, taking the device off and inspecting it more closely. No. The spinneret nozzle jammed up. I must not have made it wide enough. I was so focused on making it vacuum sealed that I completely forgot about fixing the custom adjuster. Izuku groaned in frustration as he tossed the prototype gently back onto his workbench. Great, there goes another 30,000 yen thrown in the dumpster. Looks like it's back to the drawing board. I better let Tonto-sensei know that the first test was a failure. The boy thought to himself, glancing around the room and trying to locate what he would sell next. Man, now that I look at it, this place has lost a lot of color. For better or worse, this was a fact that really couldn't be avoided anymore. Gone was the red, white and blue themed room that this place was just 4 months ago. Now it looked more like a workshop with a few All Might knickknacks here and there. But hey, whatever paid the bills, right? Experimenting was expensive. Next in line, please. Right. The cashier looked curiously at the young man as he placed his peculiar items onto the counter. This was certainly interesting to say the least. And it only became even more so when the boy wouldn't look him in the eyes. Look kid, don't take this the wrong way, but why on earth would someone your age need liquid cement? Salicylic acid? Methanol? These are some serious chemicals you've got here. Or are you making drugs? What? No. Of course not. It's for hero stuff, man. Come on. Another couple of months had passed, and Izuku was still stuck on figuring out the mechanics of making a working web shooter prototype. So he figured he would move on to making the web fluid so he could get the easier part out of the way and tackle the harder part later. But so far, things were not going so well. You've got to believe me, sir. I'm trying to manufacture my own support item, and this is the stuff I need. And, wait a second, this is a chemistry emporium, pretty much everything in here can be made into drugs. The man behind the counter looked instantly surprised at the teen's rather bold response. And after seeing that he wasn't backing down or apologizing, he began scratching the back of his head in embarrassment. Good point there, kid. I'm sorry, that was out of line. That'll be 25,000 yen. What? 25,000? I'm already down to my last 50. And I sold my last All Might poster yesterday. Crap. Izuku thought bitterly to himself, not even noticing that he just stood his ground and got his way purely from his confidence and wit. Instead, all the boy could think about as he reluctantly forked over the money was that UA better cover all support item related fees. Okay, you can do this. Deep breath. 2 more months had gone by for the boy since then, leaving only 2 more until the UA entrance exam. And the superpowered teen's journey had now brought him to one of the tallest buildings he could find in his area. Which, granted, was only like 8 stories tall, but still, it was definitely enough for a fatal fall. One I would definitely not like to experience, so please work. Izuku looked down at his wrists. They were locked and loaded with his brand new and shiny web shooters, along with web cartridges filled to the brim with 100 meters of web fluid each. They were a bit bigger than the ones from his comics, taking up a lot more space on his wrists than he would have preferred, but they did the job all the same. They almost looked more like gauntlets than support attachments. Getting to the point though, his new web shooters were why he was here standing on the edge of a building and looking out towards the sunrise. Obviously, he had tested if they worked or not before coming up here. He made sure that they passed lots of different durability and stress tests before he even thought about risking his life like this. But now, he felt this was appropriate. He was more than satisfied with the results he got. The web fluid was sturdy and had already proven to be more than capable of handling much more than what he weighed. And the shooters themselves were anything but fragile. As he said before, they came out bulkier and heavier than he imagined, but this also gave them some extra strength and durability as well. All in all, this was truly an amazing feat of intellect for the boy. With little more than a visual representation, he created something straight from a comic book in real life after 8 months of work. Alright, here goes nothing, Izuku breathed, closing his eyes before falling forward off of the building. He needed to be quick with this test. The last thing he needed was for someone to see him and for a hero to get involved. So after falling for about a second, Izuku threw his arm out and performed SpiderMan's signature pose, hearing the satisfying click of the spinneret nozzle opening and releasing the web fluid. The moment that the white substance came in contact with the oxygen in the atmosphere, it quickly expanded and hardened all at the same time, turning completely from a liquid into a solid line of adhesive webbing. Yes. It worked, Izuku shouted at the top of his lungs. As much as he didn't want to draw attention, the rush he was feeling right now was simply too great. He had never felt something so exciting and relaxing at the same time before. But something about the way the wind hit his face just brought utter joy to the boy's soul. Before long, Izuku's web line clung onto the side of a building, stopping his descent immediately and pulling him in another direction. Had he been a regular and non-superpowered person, his arm might have ripped itself completely out of its socket from the force of the web line. But he wasn't a regular person by any means. Woohoo! I'm Spider-Man. I'm really Spider-Man. He screamed proudly, getting the attention of a few passers-by as he swung close to the ground. Lifting up his other arm and shooting another web line, Izuku couldn't stop smiling if he tried. Before long, he began wandering around aimlessly, and it was then that he heard a shrill scream come from behind him. Listen lady, it's too early for all this loud screaming crap. Just hand over the bag and no one gets hurt, alright? Come on, hurry up. A mugging? In the middle of the street? In broad daylight? This guy wasn't very bright, was he? This was a scenario straight out of a comic book. And I get to be the hero. Without even thinking about it, Izuku felt his body shoot down into a nosedive heading straight for the street. This was a perfect opportunity to test just how sticky the adhesive in his webbing was. Thwip! Landing with a small tumble roll to brace his fall, Izuku wasted no time in taking aim and firing both of his web shooters at the unarmed man, making sure to only hold the trigger for a second on each hand so a ball would fire out instead of a line. When the pair of gooey projectiles pushed the mugger back against a building and stuck him there in place, the superpowered teen grinned as he crouched down into a fighting stance, preparing for anything that could come next. But after a few seconds of not hearing his spider sense ringing in his head like he expected, he relaxed a bit and looked at the webbed-up man on the wall. To his surprise, the mugger seemed to be freaking out. Oh crap. Please, don't hurt me, man. I just wanted a few quick bucks, alright? Please. I won't resist. Hell, I can't even move. I'm quirkless, please. After hearing that, Izuku dropped his guard without a second thought. That was something he didn't expect, but at least it did prove one thing. Nice. It looks like I didn't have to sacrifice too much strength for more elasticity after all. If a normal quirkless person can't even move inside of them, then even someone more athletic like a villain should at least be slowed down. The green-haired boy would have happily continued his mumbling if not for the sudden sound of sirens in the distance ringing in his ears. Police. Someone must have called them. I bet they'll have at least one pro hero with them too. Standing and holding his place in thought for a moment, Izuku considered his options carefully. Technically speaking, he never broke the law, since he acted out of self-defense for someone else, but he knew just as well as anyone that the definition of self-defense and acting heroically without a license had a very inconsistent gray area between them. On top of that, he had on some unregistered support items, as well as solid proof right on the adjacent wall that he had used them. I can't risk them taking these away, not after I finally perfected them for the UA entrance exam. While it was true that making a prototype was the hardest part since he had to pave the way himself without any kind of guide to work with, he still didn't want to waste his resources on making another pair of these. He had the final blueprints copied down in great detail back at home, but making them again would also surely cost him a solid chunk of change. Which was something he simply could not afford right now. Now recovered from her panic, the woman who was on the receiving end of the failed mugging attempt stood up and walked over to the deep-in-thought boy slowly. She could practically see the dilemma written all over his face as the police sirens got closer and closer. Thank you so much for your help, young man, but you should get going. The boy was broken out of his thoughts by the woman's statement, not sure how to react as she continued. You saved me and I'm grateful for that, now go. I wouldn't want you getting into any trouble for quirk usage on my account. Everyone knows the laws are already strict enough. Izuku was baffled as he looked at the older woman. Should he do it? Should he take his chance and run? But ma'am, what will you tell the police? I'm sure they'll ask you what happened, right? Oh, don't worry so much, I'll just tell them exactly what happened. A brave young man stepped in and saved me with his quirk. Although, I'm not sure if my memory will cooperate with me if they ask me anything further. I believe the boy had red hair if I'm not mistaken. But who knows? I am getting old after all. Instead of trying to speak, Izuku just took a moment to process everything he just heard before finally understanding what she was talking about. Brave? Me? But all I did was test my web shooters. My body moved on its own for the rest. Would she really lie to the police just to cover for me? But, what about him? They're gonna question him too, the green-haired boy pointed out, directing his finger to the terrified man stuck to the wall. Quit your worrying, young man. Who are they gonna believe, the victim of the crime, or the criminal himself? You're overthinking this, just go before they get here. Oh, right. Hey buddy, wait. Izuku paused his quick escape in order to look back over towards the webbed-up criminal. This stuff. It feels weird. It's like it's sticking to my skin more and more. How do I get out of this? Oh, yeah, I designed it like that so it would get tighter the more you struggled. It's just the elasticity and the adhesion having good chemical compatibility. What? The green-haired boy chuckled, rolling his eyes and jumping up into the air before releasing a new line of webbing and taking off. Don't worry. It dissolves by itself in an hour. Izuku walked up to the incredible building shakily, his nerves getting the better of him, forcing him to just stand there and watch. Wow, it's so much cooler in person. It was exactly 1 week to the day before the entrance exams began, and Izuku was here for a very critical step in his plan. One that was almost crucial for success. He was here to register his web shooters for the entrance exam. It was standard procedure, but it still made him nervous as heck. Especially when he found out that he would be getting told in person whether or not the school accepted his use of support items. He understood that most heroes only use support items out in the field, which was why they were barred from things like the entrance exam, the sports festival, and even regular classes. But he really hoped that they allowed him to use his web shooters with the registry permit he applied for. It was really the only way to use them officially outside of the field. The school had to decide ahead of time if the support item in question was crucial enough to go without or not. Walking straight into the main office on the first floor, Izuku timidly looked around for anyone that could help him. Hello? Is anyone here? I'm here, dear, how can I help you? Izuku's widened as the new voice appeared around the corner. And if it weren't for the fact that he wasn't trying to stop an immense amount of blood from running to his cheeks, he would totally be geeking out right now. Midnight. Oh wow. It's really you. Sorry, let me start over, The R-rated hero giggled lightly at the boy's obvious nervousness. She was used to this kind of reaction from pretty much anyone she met for the first time, so it was no big deal to her. Relax honey, it's fine. Now what brings you to UA? Here to sign up for the entrance exam? If you are, I'm afraid you're too late, we closed off registration yesterday. And no, that's not why I'm here ma'am. I've actually already registered. What I haven't registered is my support item. I sent out an application last week and they told me to come in for the final verdict. You must be Midoriya then. We've been wondering when you'd show up. Follow me, sweetie. Oh, right. Together, they walked behind the front desk and deeper into the room, going into a more private office that Izuku assumed belonged to Midnight. Before long, the skimpy-dressed hero began looking through some folders trying to find his name. Izuku took advantage of this silence to indulge his curiosity about something. So, how did you know who I was right off the bat? Are there that few people that registered support items? Licking her lips when she found his name, Midnight opened the boy's file and answered casually. You and one other boy were the only requests we got. His was a no-brainer, we approved his immediately since he couldn't control his quirk without it. But you on the other hand, web shooters? Why do you need those? I just feel more comfortable using my quirk with them, and they complement it really well. Izuku Midoriya, quirk, spider. I suppose it does make sense. Does everything a spider can. But it says here your quirk is listed as a mutant type, that can't be right, you look just like a normal human to me. Izuku did his best to hide the smile that tried to escape him at the woman's words. His idea on how to hide the fact that his quirk wasn't actually a quirk was one of his best ones yet. Oh yeah, about that, I guess I just got lucky with the rest of my body, but look, he said as he opened his palm and motioned gently for the woman to come closer. If you look really closely at my fingertips, you'll see I have sets of scopulae just like spiders have on their legs. They're what let me cling to anything too, like a spider. This seemed to be enough to convince the heroine, because as soon as he wrapped up his small demonstration, she nodded and brought her blue orbs back to his file. I see. Still, you're perfectly capable of using your quirk without these web shooters of yours. And I don't want you to have an unfair advantage over other students just because you went and bought some fancy gadget from a support company. I'm sorry, but. Wait, no. You've got it all wrong, ma'am. I made these myself. Wait, what? Are you serious? She asked in a mildly impressed tone. Show me, prove it. All of the sudden, Izuku was really glad he decided to bring his two prized contraptions, along with his notebook where he drew the specs of the prototype in great detail. After showing the black-haired beauty everything he could about the pair of web shooters, and even demonstrating how they worked, Izuku held his breath as Midnight scribbled something down in his file before looking back down at him at last. Alright, given that you constructed these items yourself, along with the fact that they match the theme of the hero you're going for, I will allow you to register these items into our system. Please sign here. Wait, seriously? That's amazing. Thank you so much, Midnight. Yeah, kid, whatever, just sign the paper so I can debrief you. Huh? Debrief me? Yes, it's about using support items outside of designated areas, same as quirks. I'm required to give you this information now, so listen up. You are only allowed to have your support items out during the practical portion of the entrance exam. If you happen to pass the entrance exam and get into UA, the same rules apply. Keep it out of sight and out of use unless class allows quirk usage. That's your green light, you got that? Izuku didn't hesitate to sign the sheet of paper and hand it back to her, listening carefully to what she was saying. Okay, that makes perfect sense. Good, now take this, it's your proof of registration, she said, handing the boy a small slip of paper. Show that to any teacher that questions your support item. If you lose it, come to the office and we can get you another one. And if you manage to get into UA, come back here so we can stamp it again. Any questions? No, I think I'm good. Thank you, Midnight. Alright, thanks for coming in today, Midoriya-san. You've impressed me with your creativity, I wish you good luck in next week's test, she said with a wink as she walked out of the office. That was the last thing Izuku was paying attention to though, he was way too excited right now about being able to use all of his powers and tricks to do the very best he could. One more week, just one more week. Chapter 5, A Fresh Start. This is it, this is my time to make my dream come true, all on my own. I can do this. Right in front of him, Izuku stared down the doors of the prestigious hero school that he was being examined for today. This was it, this was the moment of truth. Just 1 week ago he had been here registering his prized pair of inventions for this very moment. And now it was time to put it all to the test. Everything he'd done in the last 10 months brought him right here to this spot. And clearly, it was not time wasted for the boy, because he was feeling something that he was still getting used to experiencing. Confidence. With a competitive smile plastered on his face, Izuku began taking his first step towards the incredible building before the familiar tingling of his spider sense rang in his head. Recognizing the danger instantly, Izuku quickly and smoothly leapt forward a few meters and turned around, seeing someone he hadn't thought about in quite a while. Standing before him with his arms out in front of him in a failed attempt at a shove, Katsuki Bakugo glared daggers at him. Obviously at least a little bit shaken by his quick reaction. Kachan. Humph, Bakugo began, bringing his arms back to his sides. I told you to stay away, you crappy Deku. Why yeah, you did Kachan, Izuku wavered for a moment before clenching his fists and hunkering down. No. I'm not doing this again. Come on. You're Spider-Man. Don't take crap from anyone. I know you did Kachan, the green-haired boy restarted, this time meeting the blonde's eyes. But I don't care. I'm gonna take this exam and pass it just like I passed you back at Aldera. The blonde's red eyes lit up with fury at that statement from Izuku. It seemed that he hadn't quite gotten over that very real fact. A few weeks back, right after final exams, their homeroom teacher back at Aldera Middle School posted the last official grade ranking of the year for final year middle schoolers. And much to the astonishment of Katsuki Bakugo, the first spot in the school didn't belong to him, but to Izuku instead. It appeared as though all of the studying he had done over the last 10 months had rounded his grades out quite nicely. Back to the present though, Katsuki's blood was boiling over, and he honestly didn't trust himself not to blow his top and start fighting the superpowered teen right here and now. So without another word, he walked forward and bumped shoulders with Izuku. Blowing right past him and storming off into the school. He couldn't risk trying anything in front of everyone right here. He would have his chance to beat the nerd down later, he was sure of it. Izuku on the other hand was on the verge of panic on the inside, finally letting out a huge breath that he had been holding. Did I really just say that to Kachan? How am I still alive right now? What have I done? He's totally gonna murder me. After mumbling to himself for a few more seconds, Izuku looked up and found that the courtyard was now almost empty. Crap. What am I doing? I'm gonna be late. He thought frantically, taking off in a sprint for the school. Was that really the UA written exam? That felt way too simple. Izuku thought as he walked up to join the crowd forming at the starting line of the practical exam. He was wearing a green pair of track pants and a simple black long-sleeved shirt. They had all just finished the written portion of the entrance exam and were now moving on to the practical portion. Alright, here we go, just attack the smaller robots and leave the huge one alone. Should be simple enough. The boy thought to himself, remembering the words of Present Mike from before when he gave the synopsis of this particular exam. Finishing his adjustments on his web shooters, Izuku rolled his sleeves down, hiding them from view and using his remaining time to observe the other examinees he would be testing with. Present Mike said they would separate the people who knew each other, so I don't need to worry about Kachan right now. I can focus solely on getting points. As he looked around with curiosity, Izuku noticed a very wide variety of individuals. Some big, some small, some even with multiple limbs. It was safe to say that these were some of the best aspiring heroes in all of Japan. He was gonna have to watch his back out there. Soon the superpowered teen's eyes landed on a boy with yellow hair and a streak of black running through it. What stood out to him though were the words that came out of his mouth loud enough for him to hear. Are you kidding? That written exam was the hardest test I've ever taken. I'm really gonna have to try hard on this part or I'm screwed. Hard? Is he serious? There wasn't a question on there that was even remotely hard. Shaking himself from his insignificant thoughts, the super-powered teen focused up again and went back to scanning the crowd. Doing his best to try and spot any obvious quirks that he could gather information about. Alright, that six-armed guy looks like he's a mutant type, so he probably has a ton of tricks up his sleeve, I better watch out for him. And that boy with glasses seems to have mufflers of some kind protruding from his legs. Could it be some kind of speed or vehicle-related quirk? That would be my best guess. And what about that fancy-looking guy? That looks like a support item of some kind around his waist. He must be the one Midnight talked about, the one who can't control his quirk without it. Still though, I shouldn't underestimate him, maybe that belt enhances his quirk on top of giving him control. Izuku's eyes continued to look around and gather information on his opponents. If his eyes glanced over someone who didn't have an obvious quirk that could be seen, he simply moved on to the next. This went on for a few more minutes until his eyes landed on an oddly familiar head of orange hair. What? No way. It's that girl, the one from. What are you kids waiting for? The villains aren't gonna announce when they start. Get going. Present Mike's voice boomed through the loudspeakers. Being forcefully shaken from his thoughts, Izuku looked up to see that everyone was already running onto the city-like staging area and starting the exam. Crap, he shouted, sprinting after them and leaping as high as he could to clear the pack. As soon as the green-haired teen was at the peak of his jump, he threw his arm out and pressed his middle and ring finger to his palm, shooting out a web line and beginning to swing when it connected with a building. Now in the air and moving quickly through the training ground, Izuku smiled as adrenaline took over and wind began hitting his whole body. Swinging never failed to calm him down, and now was definitely a time when he needed it, because before long, he spotted his first villain bot. Let's do this. Staying true to his thoughts, Izuku wasted no time in crashing into a three-pointer with a swing kick. Detaching from his web line after impact and jumping up to avoid a metal arm that he detected with his spider sense. Now standing on the ground, Izuku faced the pair of three-pointers and the single one-pointer that now stood in front of him. Ultimately, it was the one-pointer that made the first move, running at him with an arm raised and ready to crush him. But he never allowed that, jumping up on its head to avoid the attack before his spider sense could even warn him. From there, he shot a web line with each hand at the two three-pointers respectively, pulling them towards him with all his might before leaping up and clinging to the wall of a building. Crash. Looking down at his handiwork, Izuku smiled when he saw exactly what he had planned come to fruition. What remained of the three villain bots was a stack of robotic limbs and scrap metal as all three laid in a pile together, awarding the boy another 7 points to his first three. Yes. Perfect. That was so cool. I could totally see Peter doing something just like that. The boy thought with excitement, quickly swinging off in search of more points. If there was one thing that Itsuka Kendo didn't expect from the practical portion of the UA entrance exam, it was how easy it turned out to be. Sporting a very eager and focused demeanor, the orange-haired teen was wearing a teal t-shirt and black leggings, cutting down robots left and right with both her skills and her quirk. Come on. These robots are practically made of paper. the orange-haired teen thought to herself as she crushed yet another one with her enlarged hands. Of course, she also already knew that the metal opponents would be relatively weak because of some inside information from Tamaki, but still, she at least expected more than this. Crap. Itsuka didn't hesitate to turn around and face where she heard the frustrated yell come from. Narrowing her eyes as she prepared for action again. Crap crap crap. Now being able to identify the angry shouts, the orange-haired teen ran in the direction of the danger, her eyes taking in as much information as she could. About 20 meters ahead of her stood a boy with slick blonde hair parted to one side wearing a black shirt and black pants. And it looked like he was frustrated by the fact that, at the moment, he was surrounded by 3 one-pointers and backed all the way into a corner. Oh come on. They're one-pointers. What the heck are you even doing here? Oh well, more points for me, Itsuka said with a confident grin taking over her as she leapt up at the robots and enlarged her hands. After that, it took very little effort to completely annihilate the 3 one-pointers, mentally adding the 3 points to her total tally. Wow. That was incredible. I can't thank you enough. The blonde boy shouted a little too enthusiastically in her opinion. But nonetheless, she wasn't about to just completely ignore him. Yeah, sure dude, it's no problem, just whoa. She began before stopping mid-sentence as the boy ran up and shook her hand without any warning. What's with this guy? Why is he so touchy? Starting to get a bit annoyed, Itsuka prepared to tell the boy that he was invading her personal space when just as quickly as he began, the boy let go and backed away. The thing that still perplexed her though, was that he was now grinning almost evilly. Humph, thanks for the help Red. That's a pretty handy quirk you've got there, he said smugly before enlarging his hands in a very familiar way. What the heck? Is that my quirk? Rather than answering her, the blonde boy simply took off down the road in search of more villain bots. No longer seeing any point in talking to the girl anymore. Wow, leaving just like that? What a jerk, the girl huffed. Bringing her hands back down to normal size just before hearing more commotion behind her. Hey man. What was that about? You stole my points. Itsuka turned around and yet again inspected the new commotion in front of her. This time it appeared to be a sharp red-haired boy reprimanding a green-haired boy as 2 3-pointers fell to the ground in front of him, a white string-like substance covering them. Oh. I'm so sorry. I must not have seen you. I was really starting to get into the zone, you know? Although the red-haired boy still didn't look too happy, he still managed to shrug off the boy's apology and give the other boy a thumbs up. Yeah, don't worry about it man, I understand. I'm glad you didn't do it on purpose, that kind of stuff isn't manly at all. However, Itsuka stopped listening long before the red-haired boy spoke, instead focusing on this green-haired boy that was sure she knew somehow. What the heck? Why do I feel like I've seen him before? Even his voice sounds kind of familiar. Hey! Watch out! Suddenly and out of nowhere, the orange-haired teen felt something impact her stomach, pulling her both out of her thoughts and off of her feet as she was yanked forward. Right as she landed back on the ground again, Kendo heard a crash right behind her, presumably right where she had just been. And as she took a moment to gather herself, she glanced down at her stomach to see a line of some kind of glue-looking substance. Except, it was stretchy? What on earth? Figuring she could think about that later, the girl got up and recovered quickly, standing up and turning around just in time to see the same green-haired boy shoot another line of his adhesive material out of his wrist and pull himself towards the robot with incredible ease. Now that's a weird one all right, she said out loud to herself, referring to the boy's quirk. After the boy smashed the 3-pointer that had almost squished her, she made her way over to thank him. That, and also to ask him how she was supposed to get this goop off of her. She had already made the mistake of touching it and now her hand was stuck. Hey, thanks for the save, she began, causing the boy to turn around as she gave him a warm smile. I guess I wasn't really paying attention, hey. When the boy only fidgeted to himself uncomfortably and didn't respond, Kendo awkwardly continued to try and keep the conversation going. Hey, so yeah, also, do you think you could help me with this stuff you shot me with? My hand is stuck and I kinda need it for the rest of the exam. This seemed to finally sober the boy up as he jumped up in embarrassment. Oh man. My webbing. I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to handicap you by accident. Whoa, relax dude, it's cool. If you hadn't pulled me out of there I would have gotten crushed by a weak robot. Now that would have been embarrassing, she said with a bit of a chuckle. Just tell me how to. 5 minutes left ladies and gentlemen. Time for the main event. Everyone in the exam arena froze as President Mike's voice died down, an uncomfortable silence falling over the battlefield. And rightfully so, because after only a few more seconds of dead silence, a ground-shaking rumbling could be felt all throughout the staging area, even knocking some of the lesser students off of their feet as it grew closer and closer. There it is. It's the arena trap. The zero-pointer. A random student called out in panic, his knees practically trembling. And true to his word, after another few seconds of waiting, said zero-pointer was clearly visible to everyone on the battlefield as it walked down the main street where a large number of examinees were gathered. That thing is as big as a building. Izuku thought to himself frantically, even taking a few steps back out of pure instinct. Before long, everyone was in complete panic. And Izuku did nothing but stand there and stare as a number of students passed him on their trek to run away from the enormous robot. "What are the two of you doing?" A sophisticated-looking boy with glasses and dark blue hair yelled as he sped down the road, coming to an immediate stop in front of Kendo and Izuku. "It's unsafe to be in this area right now. We must evacuate. Hurry." "All right," Izuku nodded in agreement. One look back at the orange-haired girl's expression told him that she was in agreement as well, so that was all it took to convince him. That is, until he heard someone cry out further down the road where the robot was coming from. Turning around in a heartbeat, Izuku squinted and noticed a girl with short brown hair laying on the ground right where the giant robot's foot was going to be in the next 30 seconds or so. Why isn't she getting up and running? "Hey! Come now, hurry! We don't have much time." The glasses-wearing teen insisted, this time grabbing a hold of Izuku's shoulder. "Help! My foot is stuck. I can't," the helpless girl began, but to no avail. Not only was rubble covering most of her lower body, but she could barely talk without wanting to puke her guts out. All she could hope for now was that the robot would shut down before actually stepping on her. Which was likely, right? It's not like they would kill a student during the entrance exam. There was never any previous record of that happening. Right? Clenching his fists and shutting his eyes tight, Izuku felt his body begin to move before his brain could even give it commands. It was the exact same feeling as before when he went to stop the mugging a couple months back, acting completely on instinct. "Hey! Where are you going? Are you crazy?" The sophisticated teen yelled out, trying to stop the boy one last time. It was no use though, because once Izuku got up to full speed in his sprint, he leapt as high and as far as he could, shooting a pair of web lines at opposing buildings and pulling himself the rest of the way effortlessly. Itsuka watched in awe as the boy not only went in for the ballsy rescue, but how gracefully he flew through the air after detaching from his pair of webs. That was what he called them, right? Webs? I wonder if that's his only quirk, because you need to have some crazy upper body strength to pull yourself around like that with just your arms. The girl fell out of her thoughts just long enough to see the boy land with a casual front flip before coming to the aid of the brown-haired girl. But when it was apparent that the zero-pointer was going to get there before he could rescue her, the boy ended up doing one of the craziest things she'd ever witnessed in her 15 years of life. The second Izuku landed on the ground in front of the girl, he immediately got on his knees and started digging through the rubble to try and get her out. "Hey, thanks for trying to get me out of here, but it's too late. Don't worry though, I don't think they'd actually squish us. It is just an entrance exam after all," the girl said in almost a whisper, her stomach still bothering her and making ungodly noises. For a moment, Izuku believed her and paused his panic digging momentarily. She had a really valid point. He could already imagine the severity of the lawsuits that the school would face if someone who wasn't even a student at the school died during something as meaningless as an entrance exam. But then, Izuku received a very convincing counter-argument that made him flip the script and begin panicking again. And that counter-argument was his spider sense, and as far as he knew, that never lied to him. Crap crap crap. The boy thought with wide eyes as darkness enveloped the spot that he and the girl were both occupying. Feeling ringing in his ears like he'd never felt before, and the ground shake like a magnitude 8 earthquake was going on. All the boy could think about was his one and only option of getting out of this situation alive. Needless to say, he chose it in a heartbeat. Right as the foot was coming down onto them, the brown-haired girl could do nothing but scream and close her eyes, doing her best to embrace the darkness and hope that her death would be quick. But when she wasn't feeling anything at all, and instead heard the loud sound or metal being crushed, the girl opened her tear-filled eyes and looked up to find something too incredible to describe. Right before her very eyes, the plain-looking boy who had come to save her was squatted down with the weight of the zero-pointer's foot pressed firmly on his shoulders and arms. Which was obviously a lot judging by the way the metal was bending where his hands and shoulders met it. How could this even be possible? This was something Izuku was asking himself right now as well. Yep, this is definitely above my weight limit. The boy joked in his head, doing his best to not focus on the pain. He didn't really know the logistics of why he was able to do what he was doing right now, but he figured he would find that out later. Right now he had better things to do, like trying to keep his spine from becoming a pool noodle. Before long though, the zero-pointer buckled a bit before coming to a stop. Almost as if it couldn't move forward with something in its way like this. Well, that's a relief, at least I won't get to experience its full weight. As his attempts to lighten the mood in his own mind failed, Izuku felt himself begin to fatigue under the enormous amount of pressure. It had only been about 20 seconds or so since the thing had stepped on them, but to him it felt like an eternity as his body finally gave in a bit and he fell to one knee. Looking the brown-haired girl in the eyes, who by the way, had an expression on her face that couldn't have shown more fear or worry if she tried, Izuku did his best to smile in the midst of the gruesome situation. But he had a feeling that it ended up coming off more like a struggling face that showed immense pain. Which was actually an accurate descriptor of how he felt right now. Now having been holding this thing up for almost 45 seconds, Izuku saw the end draw closer as his vision began to blur. This was way too heavy for him, he needed a nap. No. He screamed in his head, shaking it violently in an attempt to keep himself awake. If I fall now, this girl dies. And I'm not gonna allow that. Come on. I'm Spider-Man. Okay, calm down, he could do this. Peter had been in situations like this before and walked away. A really big one that came to mind was in Amazing Spider-Man number 33. If Peter could push past his limits with his tenacity, then so could he. Come on. I can do this. Push. To the boy's absolute bewilderment, the robot's massive metallic foot actually began to budge upwards a little at his command. But after taking a moment to look around, he found out that none of it had been his doing. Because all of a sudden, there was a familiar orange head of hair standing next to him with large hands pushing up on the weight as well. And doing a bang-up job of it as a matter of fact, at least from his point of view. Wow, she got out of my webbing and she's helping out with this much weight? She must be really strong. Seeing his chance to get back on his feet, Izuku urged his burning legs to stand up and take on the burden once again. Grunting loudly as he pushed as hard as he could, this time with less pain since the weight was split between him and the orange-haired girl. Breathing heavily, said orange-haired girl spoke in between large breaths as fatigue began setting in for her quickly. I hope you know, you're crazy for doing this. The boy couldn't help but give a small strained smile at her somewhat playful comment. The Peter in him that had been growing more and more not allowing him to stay silent. Oh yeah? Well, I guess that makes you double crazy for following me. Not bothering to reply to his witty remark, Kendo instead brought all of her attention to not dying by straining even more against the weight on top of her. How the heck did he hold all of this by himself before? We're splitting the weight right now and I'm already out of gas. However, before either of the teens could plunge any further into their thoughts, the loud sound of an engine brought their attention to the entrance of the little roof that the zero-pointer's foot was making. Showing the tall form of the sophisticated teen from before as he crouched down and crawled towards the group of three. About time. Kendo complained to the boy as he reached the center of the foot where they were. I thought your whole shtick was about being fast? Weren't you right behind me? Yes, I very much was, but I had to get some help first. Huh? Izuku and Itsuka said in unison. Before anyone even had the chance to blink, a whole slew of vines emerged from the ground. Immediately getting to work, most of the vines came together to make one big green pillar that crushed itself into the robot's foot, easing up the weight on Izuku and Itsuka that much more. While a smaller group of vines began rapidly clearing rubble from atop the brown-haired girl, having her free in a matter of seconds. Perfect. The blue-haired boy shouted enthusiastically. Not hesitating at all in picking up the brown-haired girl gently in his arms. Now, can you two get out without the foot collapsing? How much of the weight are those vines holding? Not much. Izuku strained through gritted teeth. He could have sworn that he was starting to see spots in his vision. Kendo on the other hand didn't even bother replying. The grunts and groans she was giving out telling the blue-haired teen all he needed to know. I see, that's not good. I'll have to go back out and see if anyone else has a strength quirk. It won't take long, I'll be bah. No. Wait. The brown-haired girl said shakily from the boy's arms. Just get to the exit and get ready to run. When you're ready, I'll touch it and make it weightless with my quirk. It won't be for long, and I'll throw up the second I touch it, but it'll give you two just enough time to escape. Got it? Kendo only nodded, barely even listening as her muscles screamed at her to stop. Izuku nodded as well, slowly and shakily lowering one arm from the robot foot and firing a web line at the sophisticated teen's chest. What on earth? What's this for? Jay, just go. Quickly nodding and following orders, the speed-enhanced boy crawled out from under the foot quickly, wasting no time in standing up and taking a track starting position. Whenever you're ready. Nodding gently and holding her mouth shut, the brown-haired girl took a deep breath, ready for all of the contents of her stomach to cover the ground as soon as she touched the enormous robot. Reaching out and touching it with all 5 fingers, the girl instantly felt sick as her control wavered and her stomach began pushing everything out. Go. I'll only be able to hold it for 1 sec, she warned before the disgusting sounds of her regurgitation took over her. The glasses-wearing teen got the message though, putting everything into his thrusters and taking off in a mad dash. As soon as Izuku felt the weight of the robot completely vanish, he wasted no time in grabbing the orange-haired girl around the waist and tightening his grip on the web line. Shrink your hands down. It's gonna be a tight escape. And that it was, because as quickly as the weight left the giant robot, it came back just as fast. Shrinking down her hands like she was told, Kendo shut her eyes and grabbed onto the boy with what little strength she had left. Feeling absolute relief when their bodies were dragged forward at an incredible speed until light hit her eyes. Ugh, she groaned painfully from the ground, not even realizing that the boy had let go of the web and was lying right next to her. Oh goodness. Are you two all right? A girl with long and prickly green hair asked, standing over them with a worried expression. The pair of teens never even bothered responding, opting instead for the sweet relief of sleep as their consciousness slipped away. Woohoo! Time's up, everyone. Hope you're satisfied with your points. 'Cause this test is over. Wow! What awesome talent we've got this year. Yahoo! Present Mike screamed out. Only this time it wasn't on the loudspeaker for the students, but rather, for the judges and faculty that were currently occupying the viewing room. Tallying up final scores now, Principal Nezu. Said white creature stayed silent and motionless while he waited for the results to appear up on screen. Giving an innocent smile when the names began to display one by one with their tally of points next to them. First place, Katsuki Bakugo. Villain points, 85. Rescue points, 0. Second place, Izuku Midoriya. Villain points, 19. Rescue points, 65. Third place, Ochako Uraka. Villain points, 28. Rescue points, 50. Fourth place, Ibara Shiozaki. Villain points, 36. Rescue points, 40. Fifth place, Tenya Ida. Villain points, 52. Rescue points, 23. Sixth place, Itsuka Kendo. Villain points, 25. Rescue points, 49. Seventh place, Eijiro Kirishima. Villain points, 35. Rescue points, 35. Eighth place, Tetsu. Villain points, 52. Rescue points, 10. Ninth place, Fumikage Tokoyami. Villain points, 47. Rescue points, 10. 10th place, Mezzo Shoji. Villain points, 49. Rescue points, 6. Many sounds of both surprise and approval could be heard among the staff of teachers as they read through the top 10. With one of the most ecstatic reactions coming from one of the Hero Course homeroom teachers. Haha. It looks like fate has smiled on me today. The blood hero Vlad King laughed joyously. He was a tall and wide-framed man with a red jumpsuit and white hair. He also seemed to be extra giddy for some reason. What are you going on about, Khan? A very tired and bored-looking man asked with a yawn. Humph, Vlad King smirked as he prepared to explain himself to his rival teacher. He wasn't really much of a bragger, but he did love indulging in some friendly competition every now and then. Oh, nothing, Aizawa, I'm just extremely pleased with the results of the entrance exam. Would you like to know why? Enlighten me, the man said boredly through the wrappings covering his neck. The blood hero gritted his teeth at the uncaring attitude that his rival was putting up. He always did this. And it always managed to get to him. I'm pleased because you're stuck with that kid in first place with 0 rescue points. Sure, he may be strong as all hell, but I was watching him. He was practically throwing other students out of the way to get his points. And meanwhile, I'll be getting the well-rounded gentleman in second place. Who, might I add, risked his life and showed off an incredible feat of strength there at the end. Phew, I sure am glad I lost that coin flip with you yesterday. The other teacher, known as Aizawa, rolled his eyes at the new information that was brought to his attention. It didn't matter who was in his class, he would push them harder than anyone and still come out on top. Though he does have a point about this kid in first place. Doesn't really look like much of a team player. Dang. As the two kept up their chatter and their playful banter back and forth, one specific teacher sitting in the back, who also happened to be a symbol of peace, was sweating profusely with a concerned look on his face as many wild thoughts bounced around in his mind. That boy, could it really have been him? He told me he was quirkless? No, I must be thinking of someone else. There's no way for someone to just randomly get a quirk. Unless. With his eyes turned to saucers, All Might stood up with his fists clenched as tight as humanly possible. No. When Izuku finally woke up and fluttered his eyes open, he was in an unfamiliar room. Just by looking at it for a few seconds, he could obviously tell that it was some type of medical ward, but that was about it. Was he still inside the school? Finally. It's about time you woke up. Izuku jolted in his bed at the loud interruption to his thoughts, looking over to the source of the feminine voice he just heard. Did you know you mumble when you sleep? Kendo jabbed playfully from her seat on a bed adjacent to his. What? What is she doing here? The boy thought nervously as his mouth went dry. All of the sudden it was kinda hard to form words in his head. Well? Say something. You've said like 2 words to me since I met you this morning, the girl grumbled. Izuku on the other hand was quite satisfied with all of the information he was just given. Taking time to work it all out in his head. She said she met me this morning. That means she doesn't remember what happened last year. So she doesn't think I'm a weirdo. Another crucial piece of information that the green-haired boy picked up on was the fact that she had said this morning. Reminding him that it was definitely later in the day, the orange sunset in the window giving him confirmation. Now he just needed the rest of the stuff in between. Sorry, I guess I just don't talk a lot. I've been trying to get better at that. But if you don't mind me asking, where are we? And why are you here? The girl smiled warmly and stood up from the bed, still wearing the same thing as before, only now her shirt had a fair bit of white, splotchy residue around the stomach area. We're in Recovery Girl's office. She brought us here because we passed out from exhaustion and she couldn't exactly heal that, she finished with a chuckle, meeting his eyes and seeing that he was looking at her stomach. Oh yeah. And you totally owe me a new shirt. When I woke up this stuff was all melted into the fabric and wouldn't come off. Not even getting a proper chance to geek out when hearing about Recovery Girl, Izuku brought a hand up and scratched the back of his head uneasily. Oh yeah, sorry about that. I designed the fluid to dissolve after about an hour. It should wash out though, I've tried it. Oh, that's a relief. I really like this shirt, she smiled before backtracking for a moment. Wait, what do you mean you designed it? In an instant, Izuku's eyes widened, quickly patting his wrists and going into full panic mode when he felt the absence of his web shooters. The girl seemed to pick up on this and put her hands up to calm the boy down, all of the pieces in her mind finally coming together and making sense. Whoa, calm down. Are you looking for your stuff? It's right there, she finished, pointing to a tray sitting at the foot of his bed containing both his backpack and his prized possessions. Izuku wasted no time in jumping out of bed and collecting the tray, putting on his pair of spider gadgets right away. Kendo observed the boy with curiosity for a moment before voicing her thoughts. I was wondering what those were, do they help you control your quirk? Once his web shooters were properly fastened to his wrists, Izuku faced the girl and gulped. They were about the same height, which didn't do his confidence any favors as he opened his mouth and began to speak. No, when I said I designed them, I meant my webs. They're artificial, see? He said softly, reaching out and showing the girl the device on his wrist. Kendo eyed the bracelet-like item for a moment, becoming more and more impressed once she saw how complex it looked. Wow, you made that yourself? Along with the sticky stuff? That's amazing. She called out genuinely. She was also very much relieved that the stuff on her clothes did not come out of this guy's body. But of course, she wasn't gonna say that out loud. What is it made out of? I'm guessing just a bunch of chemicals? Hey, thanks, but it's not really all that complicated, the teen lied, scratching the back of his head once again as he shrugged off the compliment. And yeah, just a few chemicals I managed to get my hands on. I don't want to bore you with it though. Nodding gently, the girl smiled again, satisfied with the little amount of information given. Alright, that's fair. But I'm serious, dude, you must be crazy smart to invent something like that all by yourself. Yeah, that's actually one of the reasons the school let me register it in for the entrance exam. They saw that I had made them all on my own. I bet, she laughed, getting to another thing she was curious about. But one more thing. If the webs aren't your quirk, then what is it? Some kind of strength enhancement, I'm guessing? Izuku froze as he tried to gather his thoughts for what felt like the 10th time since he woke up. Why did talking to girls have to be so hard? Are you okay? Kendo asked, breaking the uncomfortable silence. Luckily she had the patience to deal with this because of Tamaki. Oh yeah. I'm fine. Spider. That's my quirk. Huh? Why am I so stupid? The boy thought to himself before taking a big deep breath and starting over. Spider, it pretty much allows me to do everything a spider can. Like Here, maybe it'll be easier just to show you, check it out, he finished before jumping up and attaching to the ceiling with his arms and legs. Whoa. That's awesome. Izuku couldn't help but grin a little bit at all the praise he was getting. He had never really been complimented genuinely before, so this was a very new and welcome feeling. Hey, thanks, he replied. His cheeks turned a bit pink as he let go of the ceiling with his hands and hung only from his feet. Something about standing on walls and ceilings just felt amazing ever since he perfected his wall run a while back. That, and he was sure the blood running to his head would help hide his blushing. But wait, Kendo began again. I guess that explains why you chose to make the webs, but how are you so strong? I saw you swing from them like it was nothing. Not to mention that huge robot that you were somehow able to hold up before I got there. Oh, well, I'm actually still confused about the robot thing too. See, I'm normally able to lift 175 times my own body weight give or take, just like a spider. But that thing was way over that amount. I think that maybe since I was only holding it up and not lifting it, my limit was higher, but I don't know, that was still way too heavy. Can my powers grow to new limits like quirks can when they're trained? Or were my emotions helping me push through just to save that girl? That would make the most sense since I've seen Peter do it a couple of times. Oh wow, I guess that explains that. I forgot that spiders are supposed to be crazy strong for their size. Hey, yeah, it's a weird quirk, that's for sure, Izuku shrugged off again, falling back on the floor and collecting his things. So do we have to wait for Recovery Girl to come back? It's getting pretty late and I'm sure my mom is freaking out already. Tell me about it, my dad wouldn't stop texting me while I was waiting for you to wake up. And no, Recovery Girl said we could leave whenever. I just waited for you because of my shirt. Wow, how thoughtful, the superpowered teen said sarcastically as he put on his backpack. There it is again. You're so weird, you know that? 1 minute you're all shy and timid, and the next you're all witty and sarcastic. Weirdo. Izuku couldn't help but laugh audibly at the girl's observation, glad that some lessons he'd been teaching himself from Peter were starting to show. Come on, let's get out of here. Hey, wait up. I still have to get my stuff. The walk to the train station for the teens ended up having quite the looming awkward silence for most of the time. Kendo would usually be the one to break it with a question of some kind about his powers, but Izuku would only give quick and short answers, killing any chance to start a real conversation. It wasn't until the two boarded the train that an interesting topic that they could actually discuss came up. Oh yeah, I totally forgot to ask, but how do you think you did on the exam? Well, the written portion was really easy, Izuku mentioned with an innocent smile. This, however, almost caused the orange-haired teen to facepalm. That's not what I meant, you nerd. I meant the practical exam. You know, the one that actually matters. Izuku didn't know why, but this girl calling him a nerd didn't have nearly as much bite as when Bakugo said it. In fact, call him crazy, but he actually found it kinda endearing. Oh yeah, sorry. I'm pretty sure I only ended up with 19 points. I had to stop a few times to save a couple of people. Yeah, I feel that. I ended up with 25, but I also stole some from some people I saved, so that was pretty lucky, she stated matter-of-factly, connecting some dots in her head about the boy's explanation. Hey wait, I was one of the people you saved, thanks a ton. I almost forgot about that. And no. If anything, I should be thanking you. If you hadn't shown up when you did to help me out with that robot foot, I would be kissing my spine goodbye right now. The orange-haired teen managed a decent-sized giggle at the boy's figure of speech. Yeah, I guess I did save your butt, huh? Izuku managed to summon a grin to his lips at the thought of making her laugh like that before getting excited all over again. Heck yeah you did, he said, nerding out about the power the girl displayed. Your quirk was awesome. Does your strength multiply when you grow your hands like that? Now it was Itsuka who was scratching the back of her head somewhat nervously. Hey, yeah, something like that. I don't have the exact number like you do though. I can usually just tell if I can lift something by looking at it. That's so cool, he said energetically as he scribbled information down in his notebook. What the heck? Why is he writing stuff down? And when did he pull that notebook out? His backpack hasn't left his shoulders since we got on the train. Abandoning the meaningless thoughts, Kendo just shook her head at the boy's antics. And before long, he began muttering what he was presumably writing down. "Wow, you really are a nerd," she giggled lightly once again. Coming up and out of his notebook, Izuku blushed a bit, but ultimately accepted the nickname with a nod. He really had no problem considering she wasn't saying it to actually make fun of him like Bakugo did. Plus, as much as he hated to admit it, it was kinda true, he was a nerd. That became all but certain as soon as he began enjoying studying over the past 10 months. "Yeah, I guess I am a nerd." "Yeah, you definitely are, but that's not a bad thing. I bet you can come up with some awesome strategies if you like writing stuff down about random people's quirks." Dang, was he really that easy to read? Before the boy had a chance to respond, the orange-haired girl looked out the window of the moving train and turned back around. "We're coming up on my stop. It was nice to meet you, oh my goodness, I never got your name." "Izuku Midoriya." He sputtered out a little bit too fast. Shaking her head at the boy's odd persona, the girl waved to the boy as she stood up. "Nice to meet you Midoriya, Itsuka Kendo." Likewise Kendo-san," he replied as he felt the train come to a slow stop. "Good luck on getting your results." "You too. Hope to see you there." She finished quickly, hurrying to step off the train before the doors closed. Even after standing and staring at the door that she had exited out of for a solid 5 minutes, Izuku couldn't stop the same sentence from bouncing around wildly in his mind. "I just had a real conversation with a girl. And she doesn't think I'm a loser. This is the best day of my life." All Might moved as fast as he could through the school in his weakened form. It had been a week since the entrance exams, and he had been putting off this conversation for far too long. He just hoped it wasn't too late. "Nezu!" the sickly thin man yelled as he pushed right into the principal's office. He expected to only see the small director here in his main quarters, but instead he was accompanied by the 2 Hero Course homeroom teachers as well. "All Might? What brings you here?" "We were just going over the final list of accepted students before sending the letters out," the small principal said casually. Gaining a pair of nods from the 2 teachers present. "Perfect. I arrived just in time then. What class did Izuku Midoriya end up in?" Even though the question was rather odd, Nezu allowed it, nodding for the blood hero to respond. Stepping forward with a smug smile displayed on his lips, Vlad King answered the symbol of peace promptly. "That would be my class All Might, 1B. "I see." All Might said with a hand coming to his chin in thought. This was not what he had hoped for at all. "Nezu, I need you to change that right away. I would not like to say why, but it is absolutely imperative to the safety of everyone that Eraserhead be this boy's teacher." "What?" Vlad King shouted in anger, directing a scowl right at the sickly thin man. For a while, Nezu said nothing, opting instead to stare down the symbol of peace with an emotionless expression that could rival Aizawa's. "Forgive me All Might, but could you possibly give us a little bit more insight on why this is so important? If you really wish to keep it a secret, I understand better than anyone. But could you at least outline the gravity of how important it is?" "Right now it's not much, but I have a strong hunch about him being involved with some demons from my past," he said. Doing his best to be as vague as possible in front of the 2 Hero Course teachers. Nezu seemed to pick up on what he was saying though, because his eyes widened and showed emotion for a split second. "I see. Yes," All Might began again. "Not only can Eraserhead's specific skill set help with developing the boy, but I also wanted to test something out that requires his assistance." "Very well then, Izuku Midoriya will be moved to Class 1A of the Hero Course at once," the principal said calmly, now fully supporting and trusting the symbol of peace. "What?" Vlad King shouted in rage once again. Aizawa on the other hand was still emotionlessly staring at the number 1 hero. "What are you hiding All Might?" However, his thoughts were completely derailed when more of Khan's complaints rang in his ears. "This is completely unfair Aizawa. If you get the number 1 and the number 2, then I get the next 3 on the list." "Fine by me, but that means I get to pick off of your plate too." Needless to say, the second round of class picking did not go well for the Blood Hero. Chapter 6, All In. "Well done you two. I never thought that our school would produce 2 UA Hero Course students. I'm sure that we helped prepare you for it immensely." "TCH, screw you," Bakugo grumbled. "Yes sensei. Thank you for everything," Izuku exclaimed right next to him with a curt bow. In all reality, he was lying through his teeth. This school had done nothing but bring him down every chance it got. But he wasn't about to start an issue now that he was done with this place. "Tonto sensei is the only one who actually helped me. I need to go see him after this so I can thank him. Oh Katsuki, you're so funny. The principal laughed, not even acknowledging the green-haired boy. Shaking his head with a small scowl on his face, the super-powered teen promptly left the office. He had only come to school today so he could get his schedule that UA had sent here, and he already had that. So he didn't have to stand around and be ignored. He was a part of the UA hero course now. Last year he may have been a pushover who stood there and took it from teachers and bullies. But not anymore. Don't take crap from anyone. The boy mentally scolded himself. Repeating the already ingrained quote of a person that he could finally put a name and personality to. I wonder if we'll be in the same class? The boy thought curiously as he rounded a corner in the hall. He already knew that she made it in because of the leaderboard that was displayed in his acceptance letter. Apparently he had placed second among every examinee because of something called rescue points. And of course, he also noticed that Kendo placed sixth, guaranteeing that she got in as well. He could still remember the overwhelming joy that flowed through him when he opened his entrance letter from UA a few days ago. It was a hologram of his new teacher for Class 1A, Shota Aizawa. The boy put his thoughts on hold however as he spotted his favorite classroom in the entire school. Grinning from ear to ear when he met the older man's eyes right off the bat. Midoriya-san. I was hoping I'd get to see you before you left for good, congratulations on your entry into UA. Hey, thanks Tanto-sensei, but I actually came to thank you. All of the study hours you put in with me were crucial to me getting in at all. So thank you, I've never had anyone help me out like that before. Oh, don't think so much of it, my boy, it was my pleasure. It's my responsibility to help any student that comes in asking for it. I do have one question however, it was my understanding that you were quirkless. And when you came to me with those blueprints at first, I thought you were gonna try for the support department. So what's that all about? Were you hiding your quirk from the school? When the superpowered teen hesitated to respond right away, the older man took the hint almost immediately. It's okay, you don't have to tell me if you don't want to. It's really none of my business. Thank you Tanto-sensei, I'm sorry. He spouted awkwardly. It's no problem my boy, I wish you good luck in your new studies. And please, don't be a stranger. Come back if you ever want to talk. I would normally tell you to keep up with your science knowledge, but I know you will on your own. It was a pleasure teaching you this year Midoriya-san. Not being able to keep a small tear from running down his cheek, Izuku reached out and enveloped the man in a hug. Making sure to be extra careful not to crush the older teacher. Looking down at the teenager hugging him, just rested a hand on the boy's shoulder gently. He wasn't really the best at showing emotion, but he appreciated the sentiment at least. There now son, you better run along now. I still have some work to do around here. There's a new class coming in tomorrow after all. Breaking away from the man awkwardly, Izuku did his best to wipe the tears from his face and nod. Right, I'm sorry Tanto-sensei, I'll get out of your way. Thank you Midoriya-san, and once again I wish you good luck at UA. Please don't hesitate to come and ask for any kind of science help that you may need. Thanks Tanto-sensei, for everything. I'll never forget how you helped me when I needed it most. The older teacher smiled genuinely as he watched his prized student walk out of his classroom. I wonder what his quirk is? I guess I'll have to pay extra attention to the sports festival this year. Walking out of his former middle school, Izuku had a plethora of thoughts and emotions flowing through his mind. All of them to a certain extent boiling down to one thing he had hoped to hear from his beloved science teacher. I mean, he didn't say it directly, but he believes in me, right? Should I go back and ask him? Would that be weird? Why do I even need him to believe in me anyway? I believe in myself now. I don't need anyone else's approval, just like Kendo-san said. I can. Hey, nerd. The superpowered teen was abruptly pulled from his mumbling thoughts when he heard the loud and angry call from a certain blonde-haired bully across the courtyard. Glaring at his target, Bakugo strolled right up the green-haired boy with a look that demanded answers. Which was the only reason he had waited for his former friend in the first place. You better tell me right now how you cheated and got into UA. Because there's no way a useless Deku like you could get second place in a practical exam like that. Izuku could tell the boy was absolutely fuming. And if he didn't know better, he'd say that he was about to get his teeth kicked in. But he did know better. And now, things were different. Kachan, I didn't cheat. I can't tell you exactly what happened to me. But I promise you, I made it into UA all on my own merit and my own power. I put in the work and the study time. So leave me alone already. I'm not the same Deku as before who always follows you around. We're on an even playing field now, so watch out, or I just might pass. Izuku never got the chance to finish his complete statement, his spider sense warning him of an incoming right hook coming from the blonde-haired teen. Nevertheless, he dodged easily. As if to drive his point home and make his mark, Izuku grabbed Bakugo's arm as it passed by his head, holding it in place easily before delivering his parting words. As much as you've tormented me my whole life, Kacchan, I don't hate you, and I never will. I've looked up to you in more ways than one over the years, but that ends here. I'm done being your punching bag. With that, Izuku let go of the boy's arm and turned around, walking off without another word. Hey, Bakugo cried out, making the green-haired boy turn his head. Get back here and fight right now. Or I'll blow this piece of crap to Kingdom Come. Moving his eyes up to Bakugo's hands, Izuku saw that he was dangling his old hero notebook with a look of malice in his eyes. But much like the conversation beforehand, the super-powered teen maintained the upper hand. Go ahead, I've already written down most of what I remember in my new notebooks, he said with an extra bit of casual energy, knowing it would piss the boy off even more. As he walked away, Izuku tried to stifle some laughter that tried to escape as he heard sounds of utter rage behind him. Ha ha! I finally got him. And on purpose this time. Peter is so smart. Sarcasm does piss off opponents easily. What an amazing battle tactic. In truth, he really did care about that hero notebook. Not only did having all of them provide sentimental value, but he also forgot a solid amount of information in that notebook. Oh well, I can live without it, I had just started that one when he took it anyway. Okay, shoes? Check. Fancy new uniform? Check. Web shooters? Check check. He was ready for his first day of school at UA High School. Well, technically, it wasn't really the first day of actual classes, only the opening ceremony. But still. This was gonna be epic. Izuku excitedly placed his two prized gadgets into his bright yellow backpack. As much as he wanted to have them on 24/7, his Mark I models were way too bulky for that. If he tried wearing them under his uniform jacket, it would look like he had bulging forearms. Now that I'm more confident in my mechanical skills, I should work on designing a new, more slim pair of web shooters. It would be handy to be able to wear them whenever without anyone noticing. All of these filler thoughts, however, were shoved out of his mind instantly when he checked the time on his phone. Crap. If I don't hurry, I'm gonna miss the train. Still bustling with excitement, Izuku sprinted out of his room and into the kitchen, startling his mom when he rapidly picked up and devoured a piece of toast. I've gotta go, Mom. Don't want to be late on the first day. Wait. Izuku. The green-haired boy froze on his trek to his front door and turned back to his mother, bubbling excitement still very apparent in his demeanor. What's up, Mom? Dear. I know you're excited about getting into UA, but please don't get your hopes up too much. I know how badly you want it, but big fancy places like that don't usually take kindly to people who don't have quirks. So watch your back, please, dear. I don't want you to get hurt. A simple, you can do it would have been nice. Izuku thought bitterly before mentally scolding himself. His mom had no reason to believe that he was capable enough to attend UA after all. He had never told her about his new quirk, and she was just trying to look out for his safety at the end of the day. Still though, she's seen how hard I've been working, she could have at least said she's proud. No, it's okay, I understand why she's worried. I would be too in her shoes. I'm not about to start hating my mom just because she didn't believe in me. I'll just treat her like everyone else, I'll make her believe in me. I'll show everyone I can become a hero. Besides, it's not like she hasn't helped me at all this whole time. Will do, Mom. Thanks for the advice, and thank you especially for teaching me to sew. I would have never been able to finish my costume without you. Oh. Well, good. No problem, dear, have a nice day. With a curt nod and a powerful smile, Izuku took off out of his house, making sure to close his door all the way before leaping off of his third-floor staircase and landing swiftly on the ground below him. Here I come, UA, he shouted to the sky, taking off into a dead sprint that left some nearby pedestrians questioning his speed. Yep, this is definitely it, Class 1A, Izuku mumbled to himself, standing in front of the unusually large door. For some reason, he couldn't find it in himself to open it and step inside. He wasn't really all that nervous per se, but he was worried about one specific thing. Please let her be in my class, please let her be in my class, please let her be in my class. Reaching out and gripping the doorknob tightly, Izuku gulped before opening it up and stepping inside. Wow. So you're that Bakugo guy. The one who got first place in the practical exam. That's so awesome, dude. Super manly. Great. Kacchan is in this class. Turning around at the sound of the door opening, the red-haired teen that was praising Bakugo jumped up in excitement when he locked eyes with Izuku. Not wasting any time and rushing over to him in a hurry. Whoa! And you're that kid who ran in and stopped the zero-pointer from crushing that girl. Wow, that was the most manly thing I've ever seen. Sorry about freaking out at you over those stolen points. I kinda overreacted. What's your name? Oh, Izuku stammered right off the bat. First off, he wasn't expecting to see Bakugo in the same class as him. And if that wasn't bad enough, he was already being complimented off the bat by a total stranger. These two factors in turn made for quite the brain shortage for the boy as he gathered himself for a response. Haha. You're gonna wanna give him a minute. He gets flustered pretty easily sometimes. Izuku's eyes shot up at the familiar voice as all of his senses turned up to the max. It's her. Kendo-san. You're in my class. Hey, yep, pretty lucky don't you think? She smiled before turning towards the red-haired boy. Hi, Itsuka Kendo, nice to meet you. Izuku quickly took the hint as well, introducing himself right after her. Izuku Midoriya. Sorry for the delay. Ahaha. No problem. Both of you are some of the manliest people ever. I was way too scared of that huge zero-pointer to even move. The name's Eijiro Kirishima, by the way. Oh, trust me, I was scared as heck too. I just went in so this weirdo wouldn't get himself killed. Kendo quipped with a bit of mock cockiness. Well, I can't really argue with that, the superpowered teen mumbled as he scratched the back of his head. Again, I really am sorry about taking your points, Kirishima-san. Hey, like I said, man, water under the bridge. Seeing that the conversation was coming to a close, Izuku took a moment to scan around the rest of the classroom. Obviously, he didn't know anyone except Bakugo, who was conveniently looking away from him with a scowl on his face. Luckily, his little conversation with Kendo and Kirishima had gone unnoticed by the rest of the class. Most were divided up into smaller groups like his was so they could get to know each other a little better. Heck, Izuku would have gone back to chatting too if his spider sense didn't begin to tickle him. What the heck? I've never felt it ring so softly before. Oh wow. Is that really him? The one who stopped the zero-pointer's foot. Midoriya. Watch out. Don't, Kendo warned as fast as she could. But it was too late. Before he could get over his sudden confusion, he found himself shaking hands with a slick-haired blonde boy. Hi, nice to meet you. I'm... Alright everyone, settle down. A bored voice echoed as a man in a sleeping bag hopped into the classroom. What? You've never seen a tired man before? Whatever, just put these on and head for the PE grounds for your quirk apprehension test. Wait, what? Test? We just got here. A boy with yellow and black hair cried out in horror. Izuku only looked over the PE uniform before locking eyes with Kendo, both of them giving a small shrug before obeying the man along with the rest of the class. Izuku wasn't gonna lie, he kinda felt out of place with his web shooters out in the open and clear as day on his wrists. It was one of the main reasons he liked wearing long-sleeved shirts with them on in the first place. Regardless, he did his best to listen to whom he guessed was his homeroom teacher from his spot next to Kendo. Alright, now that everyone's here, we can begin the examinations. We will be doing the 8 physical tests that you all did in middle school. Except this time, you're allowed to use your quirks, simple as that. I assume there won't be any questions. But much to the chagrin of the neck-wrapped man, a girl with black hair done up in a spiky ponytail raised her hand and waited patiently to be called on. With a very elongated sigh, the long-haired instructor called on the curious student stoically. Yes? Excuse me, sir, but will we be making it to the opening ceremony still? Wouldn't it be crucial for us to not miss orientation? Rolling his bagged eyes, Aizawa spoke calmly and harshly at the same time. This is your orientation, and this is what you will be doing today. If you don't want to take it seriously, then go ahead. Just know that whoever gets last place here today will be expelled from the hero course. What? The entire class yelled in unison. Good, I'm glad we understand each other. So no more questions. Let's begin with the 50-meter dash. Who wants to go first? What the heck? No explanation on what he just said? He just moves right on? Izuku thought worriedly, his nerves rising a bit at the new risk that had been added. More upset than him, however, was the black-haired girl that asked the question in the first place. No one paid attention to that though, because soon the first student volunteer stepped forward. I will, sensei. The same slick-haired blonde boy raised his hand frantically. It's Aizawa, and you sure are in a hurry, aren't you? Are you on a timer or something? Oh, right, Aizawa-sensei. And yes, something like that. Hey! The baggy-eyed instructor stared blankly at the boy for another few seconds before moving on and getting out his clipboard. Alright, who wants to race against him? I will. A pink-bodied girl called out enthusiastically. Wasting no time in lining up at the starting line next to the blonde. Alright, Nato Monoma, and Mina Ashido, 50-meter dash. Ready? Go, Aizawa shouted as he prepared both of his timers. Ashido took off instantly, sliding across the ground on some kind of substance that was coming out of her shoes and picking up tremendous speed. Monoma on the other hand was running at a normal human pace. What? Does his quirk only give strength and not speed? He thought to himself as he reached the halfway mark of the race. Panic was now beginning to set in for the boy as he threw caution to the wind and jumped as high as he could, reaching out with one arm and pressing his middle and ring finger to his palm. Only for him to get 10 centimeters off the ground and fall flat on his face in a heartbeat. Ah ha 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 ha. The entire class laughed as the boy got up and finished the race in embarrassment. Mina Ashido, 5.31 seconds. Nato Monoma, 14 seconds flat. I made a mistake, sensei. Let me try again. Please. I already told you, it's Aizawa sensei. And no do-overs, sorry. Who wants to go next? Unfortunately for Aizawa, most of the class was still recovering from laughing so hard at what they just witnessed. With Itsuka being the only one who knew exactly what just happened. Ha ha ha. He tried using your quirk Midoriya, that's what his quirk is, he copies the quirk of anyone he touches. Apparently it still needs some work though, ha ha ha. He even thought your webs were a part of your quirk like I did. Ha ha. She explained in between laughs. For some reason, she was really getting a kick out of this. Oh. So that's why he did that with his hands. Well, I guess that confirms my theory about my powers. If he can't use them, then they must not be a quirk after all. I'll go, Aizawa-sensei. Izuku stepped forward, easily getting the teacher's attention considering he was one of the only ones not laughing. Midoriya, very well. Who wants to go against him? Kendo wiped a tear from her eye from her big and hearty laugh while she stepped forward to race Izuku, only to be shoved out of the way by an angry blonde-haired boy who looked just about ready to explode. Hey! She called out to him, only to be ignored. I'll take you on, you crappy Deku. Bakugo, perfect. That gives us number 1 versus number 2. Line up and wait for my signal, Aizawa instructed robotically. Kendo watched the two boys line up while they glared at each other the whole time. What was up with that? Did they know each other? And did he call Midoriya a Deku? What was up with that? But little did the green-haired boy know that Bakugo wasn't the only one glaring daggers into him. Across the field near the finish line, Monoma was giving him a leer that could rival Bakugo's. Which in all honesty, was quite the impressive feat. Taking his eyes off of his former friend turned bully, Izuku faced forward and prepared himself. I can do this. I know I can do this, and that's all that matters. He repeated in his head, successfully calming his nerves as he took a deep breath and took a starting position. Izuku Midoriya and Katsuki Bakugo 50-meter dash. Ready? Go. In the blink of an eye, Izuku took off in a dead sprint as fast as he could. The all too familiar sounds of explosions ringing in his ear as he heard Bakugo hot on his tail. If I keep running, he'll catch up. The boy thought as he calculated the distance he was running in his mind. He was almost halfway to the finish line, a little shorter than he would have liked to pull off something like this, but he was sure he could do it if he used his arms to their full potential. Here goes nothing. With all of the momentum he had gathered in his sprint, Izuku pushed off the ground and leapt as far forward as he could, burning a good 20 meters or so in the blink of an eye before putting his arms up and firing 2 web lines at the ground beyond the finish line. And without missing a beat, the boy pulled as hard as he could on the 2 strands of web, sending him flying forward with both his own force, and the added force that the elasticity of his web fluid provided. With his little web zip experiment a complete success, Izuku looked back to see that he had passed the blonde-haired teen by a good margin. Making him grin like an idiot as he crossed the finish line feet first, landing with a clean tumble roll. A moment later, Bakugo passed the finish line as well. Izuku Midoriya, 4 seconds flat. Katsuki Bakugo, 4.93 seconds. Yes. I did it. Izuku pumped his fist proudly. Bakugo on the other hand looked like he was actually about to burst this time, or at least he would have, if the teacher hadn't stepped in and calmed everyone down. Alright, relax, who's next? And just like that, the next 2 contestants lined up and prepared themselves to race. This went on until everyone had taken their turn so they could move on to the next test. With most of the class now keeping an eye out for the top 2 in the practical exam who were now proven threats. Next up, we have the softball throw. While Aizawa explained the rules and called up the first student, Izuku felt someone tap on his shoulder, smiling when he turned to see Kendo behind him. "That was pretty clever what you did in that race of yours. I guess you won't be going home today, huh?" And no. It was really nothing, trust me Kendo-san, all I really did was calculate my jump and how hard I could pull my own weight. Trust me, it was simple. The girl chuckled a bit at the way he just word dumped everything. "Yeah, my bad, that sounds so simple," she said sarcastically. Boom. The pair cut their little sidebar immediately and looked up to see what appeared to a softball flying into orbit. And to everyone but Izuku's surprise, it was Bakugo's cocky smirk on the back end of that throw. "Whoa?" Kirishima yelled in awe. "I can't even see it anymore." 705.2 meters. "Impressive," Aizawa muttered. Of all the Class 1A students, Kendo seemed to be the only one not impressed. "Think you can beat that one, nerd?" Izuku audibly gulped before stepping forward and volunteering, his eyes getting ever more serious the closer he got to the designated circle. "Number 2 again? Have at it," Aizawa encouraged, tossing the boy a softball. Izuku stayed silent as he caught the ball and stared down at the circle he was standing in, an idea quickly popping into his head. "Aizawa-sensei, do I have to stay inside the border if I jump?" "As long as you land in the circle, I don't care what you do. Go for it." Smiling confidently, Izuku wasted no time in jumping forward as far as he could, very similarly to his last one. Waiting until he hit his peak, the super-powered teen cocked back his right arm and prepared to throw, letting it rip when he was at the highest point in his jump. Putting all of his strength into the throw, Izuku smiled as it vanished into the air almost instantly. Pausing his little celebration to turn around in mid-air and fire a web line at the circle, allowing him to pull himself back and land on his feet with a graceful backflip. 1,279 meters. Aizawa choked out through wide eyes. What on earth was that? Rather than freaking out again like they did with the surprise pressure that came with these tests, the entire class just stood there with absolute astonishment on their faces, unable to believe what they just saw. That's almost a whole American mile. A girl with horns muttered aloud in very rough Japanese. No one, however, was more surprised than the furious-looking blonde that was already red in the face and ready to explode. In fact, he would have exploded had it not been for a student who spoke up and asked exactly what he was wondering. "What the heck was that, man? What kind of quirk do you have?" A small boy with purple orbs on his head asked in desperation. Already having figured this would be coming, Izuku had prepared himself mentally to explain himself. But now that he was facing the crowd head-on, he wasn't so eager anymore. My quirk, it's called Spider. Basically, I can do anything a spider can. Like stick to walls and stuff, hey. It's weird since it's a mutant type so it's hard to explain." The whole class looked at him like that was not enough information at all, with Kendo even shaking her head with her palm on her forehead. Why does he suck at explaining his quirks so much? Luckily for the poor boy, one familiar student cleared everything up for the rest of her class with her wide array of knowledge. "I see. Most spiders can lift up to multiple times their own body weight. So given that you're a mutant type, it would make sense that you would be given the proportionate strength of a spider." Izuku was a bit taken aback by how informed the girl was. "She might actually give me a run for my money in the classroom." "Yeah, exactly. It's just like that," he complimented, receiving only a nod from the somewhat serious girl. The very same girl who had asked Aizawa-sensei the initial question before all of the tests began. "Wait a minute. That doesn't explain why he gets to cheat and use support items," Monoma yelled accusingly as he spotted the items on the boy's wrist. If only he'd seen them sooner. It would have made his day a lot less embarrassing. "I'm not cheating, I registered these. They're my web shooters and I made them myself. They wouldn't have let me use them otherwise," the boy responded calmly. Walking up and grabbing the green-haired boy's shoulder, Aizawa spoke. "I'm gonna need to see a registry note, Midoriya." Izuku shrugged and casually reached into his pocket, pulling out the little slip of paper and showing it to his professor. After taking just one glance at it, Aizawa handed it back to him, nodding in approval at what the boy said earlier. "All right then, very impressive Midoriya, on all fronts. Keep it up. Now who's next?" As the next student moved up to throw the softball, Izuku was pelted with questions as he walked back into the crowd. most of which he just shrugged off and answered with simple responses. In all honesty, the attention was kinda suffocating. He had no idea how Peter thrives so much in outgoing situations like this. One specific student who had his eyes wide with both hate and amazement was Bakugo. Even now that everything had been explained properly, he still couldn't comprehend how Izuku had such a strong quirk. At the very least, the blonde held back his tongue for now. He had gotten his explanation at least, now all that was left was confronting Deku. And that could wait for later. The rest of the tests went by relatively quickly, with Izuku's powers being perfect for dominating each one. In the standing long jump, he had easily cleared the sandbox. Which in hindsight, wasn't all that impressive since most students did so as well, but it was still worth mentioning. On the repeated side steps, only one student managed to best his quick feet. A small purple-haired boy who used his quirk to bounce from side to side over the lines at an incredible pace. On the grip strength test, he had somehow managed to destroy the small handheld device before it could even get a reading on him, leaving everyone in shock once again. The only other student who had the same outcome with her own grip strength device was Kendo, who crushed it to pieces with her enlarged hand. It went without saying that both she and Izuku were given max scores by Aizawa-sensei. Next was probably the exercise that was least affected by quirk usage, the seated toe touch. In middle school, it was meant to display flexibility in students and test them on that alone. And flexibility wasn't really something that most quirks could affect in any significant way. Needless to say though, Izuku's spider training had done him well in not only making him more agile, but also more flexible. Giving him the perfect amount of bend at the waist to reach all the way past his toes and scoring the most points possible. The last two tests were ones that his spider powers were able to handle all by themselves. With the distance run leaving only him and the intelligent girl, Momo Yaoyorozu, as the last two people on the track running laps. Well, she wasn't really running as much as riding an electric scooter while she waited for him to tire out. Which, by the way, was still a long time coming. He'd been going strong for almost an entire hour without even breaking a sweat in his steady jog. Even the boy with an ice quirk who was just gliding along a streak of ice had given up a while back, half of his body becoming frozen as he reached his limit. What is that? 70 laps now? That girl is gonna run out of power in that thing before he tires out. Ashido mentioned to no one in particular. Getting a hefty nod from the rest of the class. I'll say, she couldn't at least pick something cooler like a chopper? Why'd she go with a lame old scooter? Kendo added pointlessly. Eventually, Aizawa-sensei ended up stopping the two students at 100 laps. Having seen enough to be satisfied and then some, the board instructor simply gave them both max points. It was the same story as well on the sit-ups. Are you tired yet? I'm getting bored of holding your feet down. Kendo complained from her spot on the floor in front of Izuku. Sorry Kendo-san, but I feel fine. And it was the truth. He had lost track at around sit-up number 200 and was just continuing until Aizawa-sensei stopped him like on the distance run. Alright, that's enough showing off Midoriya, you're finished, 300 sit-ups. Everyone gather around while I count up the scores. I'll post them here in a minute. Izuku gave a little half grin at his teacher's words before he noticed a hand in front of him, taking it without hesitation and pulling himself up with it. Thanks Kendo-san. Don't mention she began before being pulled off to the side and away from the green-haired boy. After gaining her bearings again, the orange-haired girl looked around to see that she was surrounded by most of the girls in her class, with the pink-skinned girl and the invisible girl taking the lead and getting in her personal space. Kendo-chan. You were holding Midoriya's legs while he did his sit-ups. You have to tell us, how amazing were his abs? Ashido asked slyly. What? Itsuka stuttered as her cheeks gained color. Oh come on. We know his shirt must have slipped up at some point. He did 300 of those without even breaking a sweat. He must be absolutely shredded. A girl who was completely invisible said dreamily. Although no one could really see her facial expression, it was obvious that she was at least pleased with her imagination. Guys. What the heck? I wasn't peeking at his abs like that. I'm not a weirdo. Technically, not looking would make you the weirdo. We are girls after all, Garo. An odd-faced girl with her tongue hanging out mentioned. Okay, I am not doing this right now. Nope. I hate girl talk. Go get your gossip from someone else, Kendo finished and walked away. Trying her hardest to wipe the blush from her cheeks on her way back to Izuku. Kendo-san? What was that all about? Don't worry about it, let's just go see our results, she said in a tone that came as more of a demand than a suggestion. Alright, everyone settle down, or I actually will expel one of you, the bored-looking man muttered aloud, making the entire class look at him in confusion. Wait, what? A yellow and black-haired boy scratched his head as his mind danced in circles. What does that mean? Meanwhile, many of the other students were already sighing in relief. It means he was lying about expelling last place, stupid, a purple-haired girl with earphone jacks for ears stated. Attempting to catch the slower boy up. Correct, I may not have been completely honest with you all on that, but you deserved it. Don't ever take anything we do in this class as anything less than deadly serious. Got that? Yes, sensei. Good, but that's the end of my rational deceptions for now. These scores are all 100% genuine. So take them that way, he continued in his low, raspy voice while pulling out a phone-looking device and pressing in some commands. Before long, a blue projection appeared from the handheld device, showing a list of 20 names ranked from first to last. 1. Izuku Midoriya. 2. Momo Yaoyorozu. 3. Shoto Todoroki. 4. Katsuki Bakugo. 5. Itsuka Kendo. 6. Fumikage Tokoyami. 7. Eijiro Kirishima. 8. Tetsu. 9. Mina Ashido. 10. Pony Tsunotori. 11. Tsuyu Asui. 12. Kojiro Bondo. 13. Hantasero. 14. Senkabura. 15. Yosetsu Iwase. 16. Kyokujiro. 17. Denki Kaminari. 18. Toru Hagakure. 19. Nato Monoma. 20. Minoru Mineta. Oh, thank goodness. The last place student, Mineta yelled out flamboyantly, falling to his knees and looking up to the sky with tears in his eyes. I would have been expelled if sensei wasn't lying. While some students had more extreme reactions like Mineta, for the most part, everyone else just nodded in satisfaction at the table of names. Nice, Midoriya. You got first. Can't really say I'm surprised after watching your performance, but still, great job. Kendo mentioned genuinely. Getting a nod as well from Kirishima. Thanks Kendo-san, Izuku mumbled back, still trying to digest the fact that he had beaten Bakugo outright once again. And speaking of the angry blonde, his face was among the few dissatisfied looks that were spread among the class as well. His forehead vein couldn't possibly get any bigger right about now. He would be getting his answers all right, no matter how long it took. You won't beat me again, you stupid useless Deku. Another student who wasn't looking too cheerful at the moment was Yaoyorozu, who looked on at Izuku with uncertain eyes that showed she didn't exactly welcome competition. I'll just have to try even harder in class. Alright, that's it for today. Hit the locker rooms and change back into your uniforms. I doubt you'll make the opening ceremony, but you're welcome to try. See you tomorrow for our first day of class. Aizawa ordered in his monotone voice as he walked off the PE grounds. As all of the students nodded and made their trek back to the locker rooms, Aizawa sighed when he noticed the tall muscular figure waiting for him behind some bushes next to the school's entrance. VSST. Aizawa. Over here. The enormous man whispered loudly. Rolling his eyes, the baggy-eyed man continued walking, only being forced to stop when the larger man jumped in front of him. So? Did you do it? All Might asked curiously, his winning smile faltering for a moment. Yes, I did. Multiple times, it didn't work. See? I told you. There's something fishy going on with that boy. He must have a connection to All for One. How else could he avoid your erasure? Aizawa had been given a rough outline about who this All for One was when he was given this task by the symbol of peace. And to be honest, his whole theory sounded like one big load of crap. But the principal had stepped in directly and all but forced him to go along with it, so here he was. Look, All Might, I understand why you want to keep your condition, and this big villain a secret from everyone, but I don't want to be dragged into any of this unless I absolutely have to. So can you please explain to me why my quirk not working on this Midoriya kid is such vital information? Because it reeks of All for One. First this boy shows up randomly with a brand new quirk after being quirkless his whole life. And now it can't even be affected by your famous erasure? This doesn't make any sense. And that's what makes me so worried. Still keeping an even face, Aizawa took his turn to speak. Or just hear me out. My quirk doesn't affect him, because he's a mutant type. Huh? Yep, he said it himself. And it's common knowledge that my erasure doesn't affect those types of quirks. It's also common knowledge that mutant types are the class of quirks that scientists know the least about. So no matter how weird it may sound to us, Developing a quirk later on in life could be a very real possibility for mutant types. This left the number 1 hero absolutely speechless, giving the Erasure hero the perfect opportunity to begin walking away. Trust me, All Might, I think it's weird too, so don't worry. Just don't do anything stupid and let the situation play out. I'm sure if we keep on watching quietly we can figure this thing out before taking action. Watching the stoic man leave silently, All Might shrunk down to his true form, letting the words he just heard sink in properly. Just watch quietly? Well, he had never been one to do anything quietly, that was for sure. Sighing somewhat exhaustedly, Izuku made his way down the winding hallways of UA in search of a specific classroom. After their little surprise exam and the opening ceremony concluded, students were able to go around and get a little bit more familiar with the number 1 hero school personally. With many more tours and different orientations being offered to those who wanted them. But right now, all of that was over and the sun was beginning to set on the horizon, something that Izuku was well aware of once he yawned for what felt like the 3rd time in a row recently. It wasn't until the green-haired boy spotted the room he was looking for that he quickly jolted himself awake and began moving in its direction, his mind once again going over the checklist of things that he needed to collect. See, one thing that the boy had paid extra attention to today during orientation was the incredible fact that the school was footing the bill for any and all hero-related support. Which was exactly the reason he had stayed behind after everything ended to come and visit the workshop and the support department. Stepping right up to the large metal doors, Izuku knocked and waited for a moment, completely losing his breath when he saw who answered the doors. "What you need, kid? I'm kinda busy at the moment with a special student of mine." The unusually short man complained, a pang of metal falling down echoing in the classroom behind him. Can't she go 5 minutes without touching anything?" But Izuku was too caught up in his swirling thoughts to hear the man's muttered complaint. Instead he was staring with wide eyes ready to burst from excitement. He would recognize that yellow helmet anywhere. And those caps on his fingertips as well. Your power loader. The excavation hero. Oh wow. I'm a huge fan. I studied the blueprints and designs of your power suit religiously when I was still learning mechanical engineering. This is amazing. You're really a teacher at UA. Suddenly the noise in the background of the classroom came to a pause as Power Loader smiled widely at the newcomer's words. "Ah, I see. You read my designs? And you understood them?" "Understood them? I used them as a basis for my own project. It really is an honor, Power Loader Sensei." Well, this was certainly a surprise. Who could this boy be? He was sure that he wasn't missing a student, unless that furball Nezu was pulling his leg and giving him an extra spot in one of his classes. Either way though, he was impressed, so maybe it couldn't hurt to at least hear the boy out. "Cut the formalities, kid, we're not out in the field, Mr. Meijima will do just fine." "Alright. Forgive me, Meijima-sensei." Yeah, whatever, so what are you doing here anyway? All of my support course classes are full. Are you from General Studies or something?" And no, I'm actually from the Hero course. I came to talk to you about unlimited lab supplies." "What? Hero course? Shouldn't you be more worried about punching and kicking stuff than working in a shop? What's up with that, kid?" "Oh, well, I actually made all of my own gear, including my costume." Narrowing his eyes a bit, the excavation hero waited a moment, signaling the boy to continue. "Right, well I was wondering if I could have some of the supplies on this list. It's just chemicals for the most part, I hope it's not too much trouble." Taking the sheet of paper from the boy, Mr. Meijima looked it up and down with great detail. "Liquid cement? What in the world?" "Yes, I can confirm that we do have everything on this list, but you aren't a support course student, so I can't just hand them out to you willy-nilly. What do you need them for?" "Oh, right, do you think I could come inside to a desk? I don't want to get in trouble bringing these out in the hallway." "Of course, go right ahead," the smaller man shrugged, keeping his eyes on the boy as he found a workbench and pulled something out of his backpack. Izuku took a moment to widen his eyes in awe at the complexity of the workshop while he pulled out his prized inventions. Now this is a workshop. I'd have to be filthy rich to afford something like this. Another odd thing that Izuku noticed was the presence of a pink-haired girl in the corner of the room staring him down with serious yellow eyes. It appeared as though she had been in the middle of tinkering with something in her little sectioned-off corner of madness, but now all of her focus was on him, with a look that Izuku couldn't seem to read for the life of him. "Okay, that's kinda creepy," was his final thought before finally pulling out his pair of support items and clicking them onto his wrists. "So, these are my support items, Meijima-sensei. I made them myself and even got them registered for my hero classes. Yeah, I can see that, kid, but what are they? Cut to the chase already. The small instructor said somewhat impatiently. In all honesty, he didn't expect much out of whatever those bracers were. This was a hero course student after all, and they weren't really known for using their brains too often. Alright. Sorry. I call them my web shooters. My whole quirk and hero persona is centered around being agile and spider-like, so I created these to help me out with that. Do you mind if I demonstrate them for you? They aren't destructive. Now paying a little more attention than before, the excavation hero answered immediately. His curiosity started to get the better of him. Yeah, go for it, kid. Smiling at the man, Izuku turned to see that the pink-haired girl from before was also on the edge of her seat waiting for his showing. Great. Here goes. Thwip. Firing a web line at the ceiling above him, Izuku didn't hesitate to pull himself up and hang from it upside down, showing off the weight that his web fluid could hold. If I hold the trigger down, it fires a web line, which I can use in battle, or even to support my weight and swing from. Before anyone could respond, Izuku brought up his other hand while holding himself up with the other, shooting a blob of webbing at the wall across the room. But if I just tap the trigger, it shoots out in more of a ball-like consistency, making it a perfect adhesive projectile. Now staring at the boy with his mouth agape, the excavation hero held his head, words evading him as he tried processing exactly what he just saw. Wow! What a super cute baby! The pink-haired girl yelled out as she ran towards the wall where Izuku had shot his web. Hee, yeah. You took the words right out of my mouth, Hatsum. And here I thought hero course students were all brawn and no brain. What's your name, son? Izuku Midoriya, sir. The green-haired boy stated happily, letting go of his web line and falling to the floor elegantly. Well then, Midoriya, you sure do have something here. This is incredible. Are those completely mechanical? I don't see a single speck of light coming from those things. Oh yeah, I designed them like that. I didn't want to get into anything electrical, otherwise they would have taken me even longer. Plus, I figured if I messed up on the waterproofing I would just end up ruining them anytime they got wet. That was a wise decision. Nothing beats the good old classics. Tangling with the hazard of getting shocked is a whole new rodeo when tinkering with things. Good instincts. Hey, thanks Majima-sensei, he said awkwardly, doing his best to shrug the compliment off and regain focus. Whoa. That really is a strong adhesive. The two men turned to where the pink-haired girl was and widened their eyes at the circumstance she was in. May. What did I tell you about touching random stuff you don't know about? Izuku on the other hand just scratched the back of his head sheepishly at the girl's odd position. It seemed that she had gotten her whole arm stuck to the wall in her search to find answers. Which honestly, he was getting used to. It always seemed like someone's first instinct when seeing his webbing was to reach out and touch it. Ah crap, Majima grumbled as his attempt to pull his student off of the wall failed. Hey Midoriya, how do you loosen this stuff? Haha, well, that's the thing. I created the formula to be as strong as possible while still maintaining as much elasticity as I could. So unless she has a strength quirk, she's gonna be stuck there for about an hour. An hour? What happens then? That's about how long it takes for it to dissolve. I figured this would happen a lot, so I didn't make it permanent on purpose. Widening his eyes yet again and nodding his head in approval, Mr. Majima walked back to the boy and read over the list again, this time giving him a big thumbs up. Wow. Alrighty then Midoriya, you've convinced me. I'll get you everything on this list, no problem. I'm guessing that these chemicals are for making that substance of yours? Yes sir. The superpowered teen exclaimed cheerfully, bouncing on the balls of his feet in excitement. I already have the formula written down and memorized if you want to see it as proof. Chuckling slightly, the excavation hero opened up a cabinet and collected a large tray, promptly giving it to the boy with a winning smile. Don't worry about it, kid, I believe you. Now come on, I'll show you to where we keep just about every chemical known to man. You can pick out what you need and be on your way. Really? Thank you so much Majima-sensei. Hee, it's no problem kid, I'm honestly surprised that you were even able to make that stuff on your own. The chemicals alone must have cost a fortune. Yeah, they really did. Up until now I've been really trying to conserve my web fluid. It really hurt my wallet every time I ran out, hee. Well don't you worry about that anymore Midoriya. Power Loader declared, grabbing some keys off his desk and beginning to walk towards the doors. We'll take good care of you here at the support department. Izuku couldn't wipe the grin off his face if he tried. This was incredible. Finally. No more empty pockets. Hey. Majima-sensei. What about me? I want to get a good look at the web babies. May complained from her spot on the wall. Ha! Well, maybe this'll teach you to stop being so curious all the time. You heard Midoriya, you've got time out for 1 hour. And I don't think he's gonna sit around and wait, the instructor laughed as he walked out of the classroom with Izuku in tow. Aw man. Those babies were extra cute too. Chapter 7, Doubt. Izuku woke up groggily to the sound of his phone's alarm screeching painfully into his sensitive ears. Normally, the device was placed away from his head and on his nightstand while he slept, but last night had not been a normal night. Ugh, the boy groaned as he picked up his phone and shut off the alarm, his eyes shooting open all the way as he checked the time. Crap. That was my backup alarm, he yelled out in realization, quickly getting up from his messy workbench and looking for his uniform. See, since the superpowered teen had just gotten a brand new set of chemicals from the UA support department, he had immediately begun mass-producing as much web fluid as humanly possible right when he got home yesterday. Which in all honesty, he loved doing, no matter how time-consuming it could be. Mixing the chemicals and synthesizing the fluid mixture was easy enough, but actually getting the stuff into the tiny little capsules, now that took both time and finesse. The only place that the green-haired boy miscalculated was in his estimated time of quitting and going to bed. In which he obviously pushed it a little too far and overslept his first alarm for school. Now fully dressed in his gray UA uniform, Izuku rushed out of his room and quickly said goodbye to his mom. Once he was outside his apartment, he quickly finished snapping on his web shooters before perching onto the railing of the building stairs. I don't have a choice, I have to web swing to school. The train is already long gone, and class starts in 20 minutes. The teen thought rapidly as he checked his phone one more time. Izuku knew the risks of getting caught for quirk usage in public, but frankly, he didn't care anymore. He had gone out web swinging plenty of times before, back when he was still learning how to do it. Sure, he'd had a few close calls here and there where he had to speed up and hide to get a pro hero off his tail, but that ended up being more fun and thrilling to him than scary and cautioning. It's not a big deal, after all, Peter breaks the law all the time just by being a hero in his world. What would he think of me if I was too scared to just web swing? Izuku thought comically to himself, a somewhat cocky smirk making its way onto his lips. However fictional Peter Parker may have been, he was still like a mentor to the young green-haired boy, and he wasn't about to shy away from something that the comic book character made look easy. Making up his mind, Izuku turned around on his perch to face his apartment building, not wasting another second in jumping up and clinging to the wall above his door. Once the boy had crawled up to the roof of his building, he immediately started sprinting, giving himself a running start before leaping off the building and beginning his trek to school. This would never get old. Walking through the gates of UA at a steady pace, Itsuka Kendo was silent as a plethora of thoughts swam around in her mind. Most of which were centered around a plain-looking green-haired boy and his second absence in a row. Not only was he not on the train this morning on the way to school, but yesterday when she had waited after orientation to walk home with him, he was nowhere to be found. It wasn't the biggest deal in the world to her, she just found it odd. The only reason she had even waited in the first place was because he was one of the only people in her class that she felt somewhat familiar with. Well, that, and the fact that they took the same train to get home. Maybe he took a different train today? Before long though, the girl's thoughts evaporated as she heard an all too familiar sound come from behind her. Thwip. Yep, just as she expected, when she turned around, there he was, the person she was just thinking about. Detaching from his final web line, Izuku kicked off the arc and flew forward as fast as he could, riding this last bit of momentum for as long as possible. Seeing that he was going to end up a bit short of the campus, the green-haired boy entered a headfirst dive and landed hands first onto the blue outline of UA's main gate, pushing off with his arms and landing in a steady perch crouch right in front of the orange-haired girl. "Oh, hey Kendo-san," Izuku said casually with a bit of sweat on his face. The girl, on the other hand, was not so casual, looking around frantically and sighing in relief when she noticed they were alone. "Midoriya? What are you doing? Are you trying to get in trouble?" Slowly unclipping and taking off his web shooters, Izuku's smile only grew, riding out the wave of adrenaline and confidence to the fullest. "Hey, can't get in trouble if I don't get caught." Again, this only seemed to further confuse the girl as his demeanor did another sudden 180. What is with this guy? It's almost like he's two different people. Wasting no time however, Kendo matched his smirk, almost challenging the boy as she tried to one-up him. "Humph, fine, that's fair. I guess I'll just stop waiting for you after school if you're just gonna swing home every day now." Instantly widening his eyes, Izuku's brave face faltered as nerves hit him like a truck. What? Why you waited for me? When? What are you talking about? Why did? Ha. You should see your face right now, Kendo laughed seeing his panicked expression. Huh? Izuku responded, completely lost at the moment. Rolling her teal eyes at the boy, Kendo quickly began walking towards the school again, motioning to the boy with her hand to join her. Come on, let's walk and talk, I'm already late enough thanks to that stupid train delay. Aw what? The train had a delay? I could have made it. Izuku complained as he caught up with the girl. Haha. Is that why you swung to school? Gotta hand it to ya, that's gutsy. Yeah, I overslept a little. Got caught up making web fluid all night since the school gave me all the chemicals I needed. Oh wow. They're supplying you with chemicals? For free? The girl inquired as they walked into the school. Yeah. Isn't it great? I used to burn through cash all the time on just raw chemicals, but the school said since it was for a support item, they would give me anything I needed. That's actually where I was after orientation yesterday, the support department. Sorry if I kept you waiting, Izuku said sheepishly while scratching his head. That's awesome, dude. And don't worry about it, I'm just glad you didn't ditch me on purpose, she jabbed playfully. Of course not. I'll be there today, I promise. Haha. Yeah, I'll believe it when I see it. Just as the two wrapped up their friendly conversation, they arrived at the large door of Class 1A and stepped inside. Still bustling around with chatter and background noise, no one in the class really took notice when the pair walked in together. There were still a couple minutes left until the bell, and everyone was pretty much out and about, so it was impossible to know which seats were taken. Oh good, looks like we weren't too late, Kendo remarked happily, earning a small nod from Izuku as he met a pair of red eyes from across the class. Not backing down, the green-haired teen matched the rival blonde's intense glare, holding it for quite a while without so much as blinking. After a while, Kendo noticed the boy's silence and looked over at him, growing curious when she saw that he was sharing a dirty look with Bakugo again. She was about to stomp out her curiosity once and for all and ask the boy what his relation to the blonde was, but just like yesterday, Aizawa-sensei came out of nowhere. Alright, settle down everyone, take your seats, he said in his normal monotone voice. Itsuka shook her head in frustration before walking away from Izuku and finding the seat she had sat in briefly yesterday. She wasn't gonna forget about this, she was getting her answers, one way or another. Izuku froze when he heard the voice of his instructor from behind him, breaking eye contact with Bakugo and looking around the room. It looked like even Kendo had already found a seat closer to the middle of the classroom. When did that happen? Well, Midoriya? You want me to repeat myself? Take a seat. Look at that, there's an open one right behind your friend Bakugo there. Of course the only open seat is near Kachan, crap. Class 1A's first homeroom class passed by with very minimal commotion. The only thing that stood out to the students was a promise made by Aizawa-sensei saying that their hero studies class after lunch would be quite eventful. With that in mind, it was obvious that most of the class was on edge, especially with the dark and unreadable nature of their homeroom teacher. To them, anything was possible at this point. Plus, it didn't help that their last class before lunch today was something dull in the form of math. But here they were, bored out of their minds as their math teacher gave out instructions. Alright class, I'm gonna keep things simple, the low and foggy voice of the pro-hero ectoplasm began in an even tone. I know you all have already done that meet and greet crap in other classes, so let's skip that part. I'm ectoplasm. I don't care if you call me sensei or not, just as long as you all shut up and pay attention. The majority of the students nodded at the man's straightforward approach. They had already spent most of the day just messing around and learning each other's names and other types of first-day nonsense. So, it was nice to have a small break from that. This was the collective thought among most 1A students. That is, until the prosthetic-wearing hero revealed what they were doing today. Dropping a stack of papers on his desk, Ectoplasm opened his mouth and dispensed out clones in order to pass out the packets in a quick and orderly fashion, effectively impressing and confusing the students receiving them. As you can all see, my clones are passing out your preliminary math exams. You may begin as soon as you receive them, and you may leave as soon as you complete them. So hurry it up, I'm sure you all want some extra lunchtime, right? Most of the class didn't even bother showing emotion at the instructor's final question, still reeling from the fact that they were taking a test so soon. What? A test? On the first day? What is this man? A yellow and black-haired teen known as Kaminari thought out loud. Yeah. We haven't even learned anything yet. This is unfair. Mineta complained alongside him. Sighing deeply, The pro-hero resisted the urge to grab the bridge of his nose, already seeing that some of these kids weren't so bright. Correct, you haven't learned anything yet, which is why this is a preliminary exam. It's supposed to show me where everyone is at in terms of knowledge in mathematics, which in turn will help me determine a proper pace to teach everyone effectively. However, while many sighs of relief came out around the class, Kaminari was still looking totally clueless as to what the teacher was getting at. What? Getting promptly smacked across the head by one purple-haired Kyokujiro, the yellow and black-haired teen cried out in pain. It's not for a grade lightning but, now stop being an idiot. Seeing this, the prosthetic-using teacher could help but chuckle at the antics of his new class. This was certainly guaranteed to be an interesting year. Very well then, please quiet down and begin. As the class collectively put their heads down and began working, Ectoplasm looked around to try and observe what he could. For one, he saw the yellow-haired boy from before practically pull his hair out while looking at a problem. This made the man chuckle a bit as he also noticed a red-haired boy and an invisible girl show some signs of struggle as well. The test wasn't designed to be impossible, but it sure as heck wasn't easy. He had made sure to put in a couple of problems that even a college-level math graduate would have some trouble with. Which was why he was so taken aback when the first exam was handed back to him only 15 minutes into class. The pro-hero read the name at the top of the page and looked up to make eye contact with the boy. Was he serious? Izuku Midoriya, Ectoplasm thought to himself as the boy took a bow and walked out the door. Looking deeper through the test, the pro-hero made sure that he wasn't being pranked by being handed a blank test. But every problem that he looked through on any given page only left him more and more stunned. He didn't know for sure until he graded it fully later, but this boy was at least close to a perfect score. With shock still obvious on his face, Ectoplasm brought his eyes back up to the class where most students were still focused on their tests. This was incredible, it looked like he already had a star pupil. Only a couple pairs of eyes stayed up and looked at the door that Izuku just walked out of. One from an angry Bakugo. And one from an unsure Yaoyorozu. Izuku sat quietly on the edge of his seat alone at his lunch table. He was, of course, very grateful to Ectoplasm Sensei for giving his class the opportunity to have extra time at lunch, but he didn't expect for the test to be so rudimentary. There only ended up being a couple of harder questions towards the end of the exam. So now, here he was, sitting alone in a half-empty lunchroom reading comics with an empty bowl of finished katsudon off to the side. Shaking away the insignificant thoughts, the green-haired boy focused back up on the piece of literature in his hands. Currently, he was flipping through Amazing Spider-Man number 122, and rereading this one always managed to get him to feel bad for Peter. In this specific issue, Peter had failed to save his girlfriend at the time, and as a result, she was killed by a villain out of pure spite. The first time he had read this story, the boy had cried for hours. This, of course, was back when he was still doing his spider training and burning through comics like nobody's business. The mysterious box he'd found had come with exactly 300 Spider-Man comics, counting Amazing Fantasy number 15. Which really annoyed Izuku, because that made it to where the last issue of Amazing Spider-Man that was in the box was number 299. And number 299 left him on a huge cliffhanger regarding an alien symbiote breaking into Peter's home and scaring his wife, Mary Jane. Halting his thoughts immediately, Izuku shook his head at his frustrations with the comics. Okay, I need to calm down before I become some kind of super nerd. Anyways, nowadays he would just reread all of the comics to try and catch anything he might have missed through his first run. That, and he obviously loved seeing Peter's amazing adventures as well. There was also the mystery of the 3 VHS tapes marked 1, 2 and 3 that were also inside the strange box. But those had just been sitting in his room collecting dust these past 10 months, because much to his disappointment, nowhere he went had a single VHS player in stock. He understood of course that it was dead hardware, but it still didn't make it any less crappy knowing there was something he was missing. Either way though, he didn't get much more reading done after that, because his classmates were beginning to show up in the lunchroom at a steady pace, and more specifically, Kendo was now making her way over to him with a tray of food in hand. Widening his eyes, Izuku scrambled to put away the delicate comic book, doing his best to look as casual as possible when the orange-haired teen arrived. "Sup, Midoriya, mind if I sit here?" This caught the green-haired boy completely off guard, leaving him staring blankly for a solid few seconds. He had assumed that she was just coming over here to ask him something. Why did she want to sit with him? No one ever wanted to sit with him. Ever. Lunch had always just been his fantasize about heroes by yourself for an hour time. What? Izuku squeaked out. Looking at the boy oddly, Kendo spoke again. Do you mind if I sit with you? And no, sorry, I heard you. I'm just not used to anyone sitting with me at lunch. Are you sure? Giving the boy a blank look, Kendo sat down without another word, staring her teal eyes straight into his emerald ones for a few moments, as if trying to read him. He really could be confusing sometimes, but she was determined to figure him out. And she was sure that a big piece of that would come from information about a certain red-eyed blonde boy. Starting to feel uncomfortable from the silent staring, Izuku opened his mouth to try and break the silence. Kendo-san? Is something wrong? Not missing a beat, the orange-haired teen replied. Nope, she said casually, placing some food in her mouth and chewing before talking again. I was just wondering how you knew Bakugo, you two are always giving each other dirty looks. Oh. Izuku choked out dryly, not really knowing how to respond to the sudden question. Slightly surprised at how long the boy was taking, Kendo looked at him worriedly as he eyed the floor with a frown. Forget I said anything, I understand if it's personal. Making eye contact with her once again, Izuku felt remorse set in at his cowardice to tell the truth. Why was this so hard? It wasn't like it was some huge secret or something. And no, it's okay Kendo-san, it's not that big a deal. I went to middle school with Kachan, that's how I know him. Kachan? Deku? So are they friends? That's the only explanation for the nicknames, right? Unless Midoriya is calling him that because of an inside joke or something. Not able to hold in her curiosity, Kendo continued with her questioning. Okay, but then why does he call you Deku? He seems way too angry when he says it for it to just be a cute little nickname. This time, Izuku saw the question coming, pausing for a moment before scratching the back of his head to try and play things off. Oh, that? Hey, it's not a big deal, he's always called me that since we were kids. He just says it to make fun of me and call me useless. This revelation made the orange-haired teen stop everything for a moment, widening her eyes and putting her food down at the thought. Wait, what? He meant that as an insult? He was just messing around with you though, right? Aren't you friends? When Izuku just stared down at his empty bowl in utter silence, Kendo slowly matched his expression, a frown making its way onto her lips. She understood now, loud and clear. But the big unanswered question now was how? How did someone as strong as Izuku let himself get bullied? She was very much on the verge of asking him and satisfying her curiosity, but she thought better of it. She had already asked enough about his private life, and she didn't want to dig up any more bad memories for the boy. Okay, good, Itsuka began again after the long pause. This time sporting a big smile as the green-haired boy looked back up at her. Because he seems like a massive tool, she finished with a hefty laugh. In reality, she wouldn't have said anything if he had ended up being Izuku's friend, but now that she knew better, she didn't have to hold back any feelings whatsoever. This brought a small trace of a smile back to the superpowered teen's lips, even pulling a small chuckle from him at the girl's choice of words. Yeah, I guess he really is, huh? Happy to see that the boy was feeling a bit better, Kendo derailed everything and changed the topic of conversation. Hoping to see the boy fully forget about her previous nosiness. So, what did you think of that math test we just took? I saw that you were the first to finish it. It was easy. Oh, well. Yeah, it wasn't that bad, I guess. A couple of those questions at the end though had me clueless. Those definitely weren't made for first years, don't you think? Yeah, I know what you mean. Narrowing her eyes at the boy, Kendo saw that he was still staring down his finished bowl of food. He obviously still wasn't feeling too great, either that or he hated talking about math. What was something else she could say that could pull him out of his funk? Oh yeah. Itsuka beamed, remembering something very important that was coming up. What do you think the big surprise is for Hero Studies next period? Aizawa-sensei made it sound like it was serious. This seemed to almost instantly perk Izuku up, allowing him to forget about his unknown mental dilemma and make eye contact with the girl. Oh yeah, I was wondering about that too. It'll probably be intense. Like you said, Aizawa-sensei doesn't mess around, and he specifically told us that we would be surprised by who would be teaching us. Yeah, but don't get caught up on that too much, Kendo warned, stopping the boy's train of thought in its tracks. Aizawa-sensei could just be lying to us like yesterday. For all we know, he could come back and be the Hero Studies teacher himself. I'll never trust what he says again. This made him burst out in laughter, earning a beaming grin from the redhead across from him. Yeah, that's a good point, I guess we'll see what happens. We just have to be ready for anything. Sure, they were ready. Ready for an unknown teacher to come through the door and start ruffling some feathers. Ready for the most unexpected of scenarios that UA could throw at them. Heck, They were even ready for Aizawa to come trudging in and declaring that what he said before was another rational deception. But what they weren't ready for was exactly what ended up happening. "I am here!" a large and flashy man yelled as he burst through the class doors with an even flashier costume to boot. "Whoa! It's All Might," Kirishima yelled enthusiastically, stating the obvious. "No way! All Might is a teacher at this school? I knew it. So the rumors were true. This is gonna be so cool." A year ago, Izuku would have been just as, if not more excited than his classmates to see the symbol of peace. But now, he wasn't feeling the excitement at all, even with the man wearing his iconic Silver Age costume. In fact, the green-haired teen was feeling something more along the lines of dread at having to face All Might again. "He's my hero studies teacher? What are the odds? I hope he doesn't recognize me, that would be an awkward conversation." Who was he kidding? All Might probably saw hundreds of faces a day. There was no way he would remember some kid who claimed to be his biggest fan. That's probably what every kid told him. Having cleared up the thoughts going off in his head to a degree, Izuku looked up again and listened closely. He still planned on acing whatever All Might had in store for them. "Ah ha ha, settle down now my young students. Yes, it is I, All Might, and I will be your hero studies teacher this year." The symbol of peace paused as the class cheered once again, waiting for it to die back down before speaking again in his signature booming voice. "I'm glad you are all as enthusiastic about that as I am. I will be doing the best I can this year to teach each and every one of you all that I can. But that's enough of an introduction, don't you think?" the pro-hero asked rhetorically, lifting his hand and pressing a button on some sort of remote. Everyone watched in awe as whirring noises began to emit from the wall of the classroom, opening up compartments holding an array of metal briefcases numbered 1 to 20. On the wall to your right you will all find your hero costumes for today's class. Please collect the satchel with your corresponding class number and change in the locker rooms. We're going to training ground beta. The entire class got up in an excited frenzy to collect their beloved hero costumes. Something that even Izuku joined in on as he collected his briefcase and joined a smiling Kendo, walking out of the classroom in a pair behind everyone else. What the superpowered teen didn't notice, however, was the inquisitive stare that was on him the entire time, courtesy of a certain number 1 hero. Izuku finished adjusting his web shooters as quickly as he could. Even then he was still one of the last boys in the locker room after changing. It seemed that everyone was extremely eager to get started. Fidgeting with the devices on his hands while he walked, the green-haired teen began making his way out to training ground beta, figuring he could finish up while he made his way out. He was already clad in his hero costume, a very accurate representation of his fictional mentors, with a few key differences. The first, and most obvious, was the completely different color scheme. Izuku had opted for 2 contrasting shades of green in favor of the classic red and blue, with a light cyan green replacing the red, and a darker green replacing the blue. Another change that he couldn't really avoid was his 2 support items, clearly in view on his wrists. They were now fully adjusted, but still in plain sight. He would have preferred to keep them hidden underneath his costume like Peter did, but that wasn't in the cards for him until he figured out how to make them smaller on his wrists. Other than those small changes, however, Izuku's costume was true to its comic counterpart, even if it did look a bit raggedy on behalf of his novice sewing ability. Quickly doing his best to catch up to the rest of the class, Izuku was one of the last ones to gather around All Might, instantly spotting Kendo's distinguishable orange hair. "Kendo-san," Izuku called as he walked up behind her, making her turn to face him. The look on her face said it all as she looked him up and down and inspected his costume closely. Midoriya? Is that really your costume?" she asked, somewhat perplexed. "Yeah. Isn't it awesome? I made it myself," he exclaimed happily, putting his mask on and posing in front of her. Itsuka on the other hand had her head tilted to the side in a bit of confusion. She supposed that him making it himself was the reason it looked so patchy. But still, it did look a bit ridiculous. I guess with the mask on it does make it look a little cooler." "Made it yourself, huh? Well, that's pretty neat. I definitely don't think I'm skilled enough for that," she said, gesturing down to her own costume. Taking his mask off again and observing the girl's attire, Izuku couldn't help but think that it was the perfect embodiment of both simplicity and complexity all at the same time. Draped over her body was a turquoise qipao that stopped down at her knees along with a black corset tightened firmly around her waist. She also wore a black domino mask over her eyes and turquoise flats that matched the rest of her costume. Overall it looked very martial artsy. "Wow, your costume is awesome, Kendo-san. It really fits." "Alright. Now that everyone is here, let us begin the battle trial. The symbol of peace boomed excitedly, interrupting the green-haired teen and gaining everyone's attention. Izuku locked his eyes with Kendo's, feeling better when he saw her nod at him in understanding. Once he had complete and utter silence again, All Might spoke again while throwing out a signature thumbs up. Listen carefully, young heroes, because today, we will be practicing something that every hero must know how to do correctly. Battling indoors. Many sounds of elation, confusion and even dread were heard from the class, but All Might continued his explanation nonetheless. Today's battle trial will have a bit of an American twist to it, with a search and rescue operation to secure a nuclear weapon. The number one hero shouted flamboyantly, striking a pose and waiting for his students to be impressed. Unfortunately, only crickets were heard from the audience, causing All Might to clear his throat and carry on. You will all be going head to head in pairs of two, one team as heroes and one team as villains. The heroes must either defeat the villains in combat and secure them with capture tape, or simply secure the nuclear weapon. Naturally, the villains will be doing the opposite, defending the nuclear weapon and taking down the heroes. Any questions? Now that everything was explained properly, everyone in Class 1A was showing pure enthusiasm at their coming trial. Even Mineta was pumped up, already going around asking girls to partner with him. In fact, everyone was going around partnering up. Even Izuku found himself looking directly to his right at the orange-haired girl with hope on his face. Before he could open his mouth to ask her, however, the loud voice of the symbol of peace shut everyone's partner hunt down instantly. No questions? Good. Then we will begin drawing numbers in order to determine the pairs and the roles. A collective groan rang across the street at the instructor's words as All Might reached in and began the drawing. Not hearing his name for the first few draws, Izuku saw Kendo begin to listen for her name and turned away from her. He might as well use this moment to think about the coming assignment. In theory, this was the perfect test for someone like him. His powers weren't all that destructive to an indoor environment, and his well-roundedness gave him the option to be both sneaky and loud when faced with the task of securing an objective. As a matter of fact, if he didn't know any better, this could have been a scenario right out of Peter's Adventures. This was tailor-made for him. Now all he needed was some luck. He'd prefer to be on the hero team for obvious reasons. And he was confident that he could work with anyone in the class barring Bakugo, but since that was only a 1 in 20 chance, the green-haired teen felt pretty good about his odds. His timing was impeccable as well, because right as he finished wrapping up his thoughts, he heard his name boom from the symbol of peace. Next up is Team E, consisting of Izuku Midoriya and Itsuka Kendo. You two will be the hero team. Hearing this, Izuku's neutral face immediately jumped up into a smile as he met her eyes. It looked like luck was finally going his way. And the villain team going up against them will be Katsuki Bakugo and Nato Monoma. And just like that, the superpowered teen's smile faltered. Seriously? I'm going up against Kachan already? Quickly diving back into his head, Izuku took this new development in stride, calming his nerves and taking a deep breath. Realistically, he should be okay now. He already laid everything out to his former friend, and he had even beaten him yesterday several times in the quirk apprehension test, so why would this be any different? Oh, who was he kidding? That answer was obvious. This time he'd have 10 months of pent-up rage coming at him in actual combat. Can I beat Kachan in a direct fight? I handled him in that little skirmish in front of our middle school a few days back, but this is different. He didn't use his quirk back then. What if I? Izuku was shaken out of his thoughts by a hand touching his shoulder. Looking up, he saw the familiar teal eyes of his orange-haired classmate right as she began speaking. Come on Midoriya, didn't you hear All Might? We're up first, let's go kick some butt, she said enthusiastically, without a care in the world. Yeah, let's do it. Izuku replied softly, following her to the entrance of the building. Alright, what's the plan, Midoriya? I know you've got something. Izuku once again shook out of his thoughts and tried to get his head in the game. Why was this bugging him so much? Come on. Stop thinking so much. I thought I was over this. Midoriya? Are you okay? Kendo asked with some concern after his elongated silence. Huh? Oh, yeah, I'm fine. Let's get to planning. We don't have much time left. The orange-haired teen narrowed her eyes at him suspiciously at his poor attempt to change the subject. But seeing as he was right about them having a limited amount of planning time, she let it slide. Alright, let's hear it. Right. Izuku began, bringing a finger up to his chin in thought. Okay, well let's look at the obvious first. We're going up against Kachan and Monoma-san, so this already isn't gonna be easy. Do you know if Monoma-san has already touched anyone? Going deep in thought for a moment, Kendo shook her head after a while. No, I don't, he wasn't next to us when the teams were being picked. Well, that's okay, that doesn't change much, because regardless of who Kachan has as a teammate, I'm pretty confident he's gonna come down after me right away. This got the girl's attention instantly. You really think he would risk his mission like that just to settle the score with you? Ha, are you kidding? He probably won't even think about the mission at all. I can almost guarantee we'll see him within 5 minutes of entering the building. This made Itsuka pause for a moment while she digested this surprising information. What was up with these two? So, what's the plan? I'm sure we can take him down together pretty easily, don't you think? Kendo asked, breaking the silence. I don't know about that, Kachan is really strong, we shouldn't underestimate him. Can you give me a full rundown of your quirk? The orange-haired teen smiled at something familiar being asked of her, and responded without hesitation. Of course. It's called Big Fist. It's pretty much exactly what you've already seen. I can grow my hands and increase my strength with them a lot. Really straightforward and boring, ha. Izuku on the other hand was thinking the opposite as he analyzed and brainstormed ideas involving her abilities. Alright then, so I'm guessing you prioritize fighting over everything? Yep, exactly. I'm even a black belt in karate, so I work at my best in close range. Izuku nodded, happy with that response as he formed a plan in his head. Seeing as she was a battle hero, he dismissed the idea of splitting up and sending her for the nuclear weapon alone. She could be a valuable asset against Bakugo if they double-teamed him. This was perfect. Alright, I've got something. Here's what we're gonna do. Alright you crappy extra, listen up cause I'm only gonna say this once. I'm going down there and taking down that useless Deku once and for all. Got it? I don't give a crap what you do, just don't get in my way, Bakugo yelled with his back turned to his teammate. He was almost the whole way to the exit of the room when he felt a hand on his shoulder stop him momentarily. Relax tough guy, you misunderstand me completely. What do you say I join you? I've got a bone to pick with Midoriya as well. We can crush him together. Despite not wanting any help at all in his personal endeavor, Katsuki couldn't help but smirk a bit at the slyness in the boy's voice. Back with Kendo and Izuku, the pair were both sitting in silence as the last of the preparation period drained away. They were both already aware of what the plan was, having just gone over it twice to make sure they were ready. Now they just had to wait. But while Itsuka was waiting calmly and eagerly, Izuku was a slightly different story. And the orange-haired teen couldn't help but worry when the boy started mumbling incoherently again. Okay, just calm down, I've gotten past this already. I'm not scared of Kachan, I'm stronger than him now. There's no reason to be thinking about this so much. Everything is gonna go exactly according to plan. Just like I told him before, I'm done being his punching bag. Looking like he had gotten his mind in order, Izuku looked forward with fire in his emerald eyes, ready for the battle ahead. However, the quick change in demeanor was not enough to stop Kendo from voicing her concerns. Alright, Midoriya, what's wrong? I know something's up, you've been mumbling to yourself this whole time. Izuku barely caught what she said before she kept going. Is this about facing Bakugo? You can tell me. I'll understand if you're nervous. Well, kinda, but I think I'm okay now, I just needed to get my head straight. I thought I was done with this crap after I beat him in all those tests yesterday, but it looks like there's still some doubt there still. Itsuka broke into a small smile at the boy's words. Happy that he was finally venting this stuff to her. She was expert on this type of stuff thanks to a certain third year, so she already had the perfect encouragement on deck for him. Good, just remember to believe in yourself, okay? He's just an asshole. Who cares what someone else thinks? Yeah, I remember. Thanks Kendo-san. Izuku finished for her and looked forward with a brand new hunger. It was as if he had just been reminded of something important, so important in fact, that he didn't even realize what he said until it was too late. After the girl stayed silent for a while, Izuku slowly crept his wide eyes over her, only to see an emotion that he hoped he was reading wrong. Realization. How did you know I was gonna say that? Izuku scrambled as he looked back and forth between the starting line and the orange-haired girl. Crap. Suddenly though, the loudspeaker came to life and the familiar voice of All Might sounded through them.